Salut Faranaz.
Coucou.
T'es toujours la première, hein? Bah non, c'est super, c'est très bien. Génial. Je suis désolée, alors je mets pas ma caméra, mais comme je dois travailler en même temps à côté, voilà. Bon, ça
Bah,
va, tout va bien? Ça s'est bien terminé hier? Oui?
oui, 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 oui. Bah, non, c'était super intéressant. Dara, comment dire, elle a fait des retours sur
Sur le
le projet
travail, oui,
d'Antoine. Voilà.
d'Antoine.
Et
Trop
du coup,
bien.
bah, de toute façon, c'est toujours intéressant mais pour tout le monde parce que bah, ce qu'elle peut lui faire comme retour, ça peut aussi bien s'adresser à nous. Donc,
Oui, oui, oui. Moi, je me suis dit que ce serait super d'avoir un peu comme un modèle, qu'elle nous donne vraiment des pistes, comme des guidelines pour qu'on puisse, enfin que vous puissiez travailler dessus. D'ailleurs, j'ai fait un tableau où il y aurait à la fois vos présentations
ouais,
et puis les présentations que vous nous avez envoyées et puis les prochaines présentations pour New York. Comme ça,
d'accord.
on verra un peu la différence.
Ok.
Salut Mélanie.
Salut.
Bonjour, hello.
Salut Jeanne.
Hello.
Dara arrive, elle est en train de juste se prendre un petit café.
Moi aussi j'en ai un.
Moi, j'en ai pris un tout à l'heure. J'avoue que c'est assez fatigant, hein, comme c'est dense comme.
Ouais, ouais, bien sûr. Bon, normalement, tous vos appartements sont réservés.
Oh,
Voilà.
Yay!
Ouais, c'est cool. Et maintenant, je vais prendre les billets d'avion. Donc, n'hésitez pas à me dire qu'est-ce qui vous convient. Moi, ce qui serait super, c'est que tout le monde arrive le premier. Mais je conçois que vous ayez un planning. Donc, n'hésitez pas à me dire un petit peu votre, vos demandes, quoi. Alors, il y a Benjamin.
moi,
Salut Mani.
Salut.
Vol direct, c'est pas mal.
Ouais, ça, pas de souci. Salut Benjamin.
euh,
Hello
je-
Dara.
Hello. Good
How are
morning.
you?
Good afternoon. How's everybody's day so far?
Very well.
All right. So with the few minutes that we always have right before the call, let's go back into talking about stories. Joy generously shared her own. Manny talked a bit about his
Hello
yesterday.
Isabelle. Hello
Does
Léa.
anyone want to share a bit about the stories that have impacted them and maybe the reason they think why? I was sharing as a reference this morning, I was thinking about world building, and I went on this walk and I was listening to Gorillaz. Does anyone else listen to the band Gorillaz?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that they are so masterful at world building. They're a perfect example of a term I used the other day called transmedia. Oh, Ben has to go fix tech. So transmedia, I'm sure there is the very specific translation, but it's creating across different types of media. And they have been so amazing between their music, of course, franchises, collaborations, their visual identity, how they built worlds around every album. And I was just thinking a lot about that in relation to this program and how this concept project, I'm not sure even how serious Gorillaz was when it was originally started, has transformed into this absolutely incredible world and has such a presence. And it's to date the most successful animated and non-existent band in the world. But those, like the stories of Gorillaz, from the music end to the visuals, just have impacted me since I was a teenager. I was so impressed by how well done it was. Does anyone have examples of stuff like that? They can be indirect stories. It doesn't have to be, you know, a folk tale or something. Or it can. I know we all tell stories. It's okay. We also all consume them.
I talked before about riots with League of Legends. We have a lot of transmedia and some metaverse, I think, maybe coming. Don't know what to tell about it, but you have comics, you have, of course, Arcane, with animation. They have music with real and not real virtual band. Some design and clothes thing. Yes, yes, and
blew my mind.
Through the image too.
Oh, I forgot about that one.
They have two virtual. Yes.
Does anyone know what we're referring to? I'm sure that people here play League of Legends or know about it. Isn't it like an official sport in Japan or Korea? I'm forgetting.
No, it's not an official sport. I thought it was in South Korea.
Yeah, in Korea, I think.
Just
where it's treated with
it's recognized as a sport like chess.
That's incredible. And then oh, sorry, it's cutting out for me. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah. To me too.
Okay.
I was thinking
Melanie's frozen. Yeah, I think League of Legends and the stories told around worlds like that, where a player, for anyone that, is everyone familiar with League of Legends here? As a game? All right, Jean, do you want to talk a little bit about League of Legends because you brought it up?
I'm not a big fan of League of Legends. I like Riot. I like the VFX. I like the story around. I like League of Legends, but not like a big fan who play a lot of LOL. But I think the world they built behind and around the game is very, very impressive. And with Arcane, I think we passed some I don't know, some gamers tool, some gamers vision, and maybe come with a more mainstream vision. I think Arcane is very powerful.
Yeah, I also agree with you. And I'm not someone that plays those, but I keep track of them because of how impactful they are on the gaming industry, and particularly the studios, like when you reference Riot. Oh, and also yesterday, up came Travis Scott in Fortnite. And then also, I think it was, I forgot who it was that mentioned Ariana Grande, seeing her show. Those were unbelievable. I highly recommend, if you've not seen them, and not necessarily going and buying Fortnite and, you know, trying to rewatch them, but just go to YouTube. It's unbelievable how they tell the story of a real person crash landing in this fictional game world. And it's not, again, when I'm saying tell a story, it's not like there's a narrator, it's a concert, but the way in which they build that out and they establish presence, as if you are dropped into that world and understanding the rules as you go, but it just happens to be at a insane Travis Scott concert that shoots you off into the stars of Fortnite. It's an unbelievable visual experience. I was really blown away by it last year. Mm-hmm. Right. Any other stories or worlds that really inspire you guys?
Dara, Maria just arrived.
Oh, Maria just arrived. Awesome.
I let her enter if you want.
Fantastic. Maria's our first speaker. I think you can still take a minute or two to talk about some other examples. Are there any other worlds that are very inspirational?
I can make some more example about danger in the heaven. You know, it was not a lot. It was not like the Travis Scott concerts because the gamer are not in the game as at this time. But I think it was in the same way. I can share in the chat.
Yeah, if you could, I was actually just literally pulling up all the links as you're saying this.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Maria, we were just talking about world building and some great examples in terms of how do you use lots of different types of media to create a believable, or if not so believable, really interesting and engaging world for whomever is exploring it, whether they're gamers or it's an art-based audience. League of Legends came up. We're talking about some Fortnite stuff with Travis Scott from last year. I'm sure that you saw that. And then Gorillas. Any other examples for me to pull up and share with everyone? Thanks, Jean.
Oh, you put me on the spot in here.
Oh, no, I'm not saying you have to. I'm saying that for anyone else before we start the talk, you don't have to jump in.
I can though.
I put everyone else on the spot every morning, not you. You got weeks to prepare.
Yeah, just quickly, and it's in relation to what the project we are doing right now. Something that's really impactful to me over the years was Snowpiercer. Not because of
I don't know that.
Not Snowpiercer is a comic from a few years ago. It was adapted into a film and then into a TV show on Netflix, I think, or Amazon or something. It's a story about a train that rushes through the ice age the humans provoked, and there's this huge class system with the back of the train is the poor people, and the top of the train the rich people, and the conductor, which is like a god. And I really enjoy the words that are able to contain what drives our world, but into a small space. So
that's really interesting.
Maybe that's why we did a video game where there is a very small planet that tries to reflect the way our big world works. So yeah, that's.
Thank you for sharing that. I just pulled up the link. I'm remembering there's another piece that is often associated with futurism called Snow Something. I was thinking it was that. Do you know what I'm talking about? I'll go research it. I might be thinking of the same piece, but it sounds really interesting. And I like when we take really big concepts like class or race or society and distill them into very understandable metaphors. And I think that's a great storytelling tool. Before we hop into Maria's talk, I know we're a minute over. I also wanted to bring up horror because I know a few people are working on slightly more disturbing topics, whether it's traditional horror or it's something around that with certain concepts. But I personally am a big baby. I can't handle horror movies. I can't do it. And I was with a friend recently visiting, and she had the movie It Follows on. Has anyone seen It Follows? You love it, Melanie. No, I am still deeply disturbed. And the thing about It Follows, I didn't even watch the whole thing. That's how much of a wimp I am. But the point I'm making is that horror movies are incredible often at setting tone. And really, if you sit down and examine a horror movie, I think that even if you don't love the plot, whatever, you can really quickly see the different ways in which the director or the writer starts to consider how to bother you and creep you out. So It Follows, I'm not going to say I recommend it because it's still bothering me, but it's a horror movie that at times is set in broad daylight. It's just a bunch of teenagers running around. There's nothing inherently scary about it until you start letting yourself go into this world that the director has created, and it's horrifying. So I don't know, is anyone here into horror besides Billy? Does anyone else really appreciate horror? Benjamin, are you a big baby like me? I'm seeing a hard no.
I haven't watched horror things since I was 14. I can't. So I'm not
scary movies, horror and scary movies and scary games scare me as well. And the jump scare effect isn't something I'm really willing to experience. When I say that I'm into a horror, these are more movies like psychological horror, like It Follows. There are also other great examples of movies that we can say that they are horror movies, but does not involve any gore or not so much, or any jump scares. For example, It Follows is a great example, but Get Out as well, which tackles racial issues, and Hereditary or Midsommar. I can write it down. There are Midsommar is really, really really cool for someone who's not into being scary, but it's
I agree with you. I am just a baby.
Daylight. It's in daylight. Yeah. Nothing can happen in bright daylight in beautiful Sweden. Everyone is blonde with wild clothes. There are flowers everywhere. But I think horror movie is important because the themes it carries often are somehow matters. Like It Follows is a metaphor from my point of view of sexual shame and how do you say sexual disease? What do you say it in English?
Yeah, you're correct.
Les MST?
Yes, that's it. Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and it's a representation of the fear of getting an STD and being slut shamed, etc., etc. And I think it works wonderfully to sort of manifest, crystallize the kind of fears we have in a piece of media. This was my pamphlet for to defend horror movies.
Yeah, that's it. And do you have some example of game in the same way of It Follows and Midsommar?
Yes, I think I like the Silent Hill vibe, but there are monsters inside, so it's not sort of the same thing. Maybe not scary at all, but with a heavy ambience and subject would be Inside by Playdead, the same who did Limbo. It's really my type of games, actually. It's a stereotypical game I like because it's really short and not that hard and one player and very immersive and tells a big story about society and modern slavery. I think this type of game are amazing. And towards Silent Hill, I recommend you watching on YouTube Silent Hill PT, which is a demo of a game that never got made. And I have to check which amazing filmmaker worked on this. Just a second. PT.
I'm loving this. I love that. Oh, go ahead, Melanie. What were you saying?
Sorry, it was Hideo Kojima and Guillermo del Toro who worked on it. Guillermo del Toro is a big filmmaker. It looks insanely good. Please carry
on. No, I'm loving that we're having this, and I really, because all of you, as I keep saying, all of you are so talented and have really interesting, eclectic backgrounds. Anytime you're wanting to inspire each other and share resources, I think that is fantastic. So whenever these happen, like just shove them all in the chat or the Discord. This is great. I want to say, I'm going to introduce Maria now. We can, of course, continue to keep up conversations about examples. That doesn't have to stop. If you think of one related to her talk or related to this, feel free to continue to drop in the chat. But with that, we welcome our lovely speaker. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi.
Hey.
So I read your bios, I read about your projects, all sounds like really cool. I understand that some of you are developing like more of the XR projects, some of you are developing more traditional games. And I'm really excited maybe in the future when you come here, if you're still planning to come here in February, like to maybe give you some workshop if we figure it out with Dara. But today I wanted to talk about a little bit different stuff. So I know you're like deeply immersed in your projects, but I want to talk more about like meta stuff, about like skills that you will need as a game designer, game developer, or XR creator in your life. And like when are you going to be moving further in your life? You know, what do you think you will do like after your projects, and how, like what skills you have to develop? And I'm going to be speaking from the point of view like of America, like United States particularly, because stuff's hard here, but it's really exciting. Like recently, there are a lot of opportunities here and a lot of new developments. And as far as I understand, the goal of the program, it's like sharing the knowledge, sharing the experience between like United States creator and France creators, right? So I hope I can talk unbiased about it because I'm an immigrant. So I wasn't born here. I live here only for 7 years. And I have this like a little bit fresh like view on like how this all works. So I'm just gonna guide you through like pretty quickly through my story, through my experience. through the skills I developed over the years and how they were applicable to different types of project. And then I will open to Q&A, and so let's start. Can I share my screen? Okay. So I'm Maria. You can always write me an email if you want me at synestheticecho.com. That's my studio. So I really like sharing my learnings and literally every day I learn something new. And one of my problems was I could never pick one thing to do. As far as I can read from your biographies, maybe you do, because you'll have like different things about you, your producers, your designers, your developers, and that's good. That's fine. So I think life is a long adventure. So what skills do you need to build to succeed and create new worlds that will change this world, one precious world? So I was born in 1987 in this like red dot, probably you know nothing about. It's in Central Asia, in Kazakhstan. And one of the skills I immediately learned is how to survive in the very hot and very cold climate. And it really helped me like over the years. So I'm really resilient to like environment changes, and environment changes a lot in America. So this was like similar to my living room that I had. I graduated school and learned German in school, and that was my first skill, I guess. Learned German allowed me to kind of like go into the internet and learn from people who has absolutely like different background than me, to talk with them and like to get new insights. I mean, I was a baby, I was 17, but it helped me a lot. And also I developed like imagination because there was literally nothing to do in my city, in my country mostly. Like nothing. I didn't even have a TV. So I graduated as a bachelor. Yeah.
Sorry, it's cutting out in and out a lot. I'm not sure if that's just on my side.
No, it's not.
No,
Mine as well.
It's
Yeah.
okay.
everyone.
Maybe perhaps we can maybe turn off video for a little bit, Maria. I don't know if that would help.
Sure, we can try.
Okay, thank you. So sorry.
Yeah, is that better?
I think so. Let's try for like a minute. And
Okay. So I graduated as Bachelor of Journalism, which I wasn't intended to do because just nothing else was available for me. And immediately started my own studio and started to do like some creative stuff, creative business. This is like a slide from my comic book, one of the comic books I made. So we made websites, ad poster, photography, and like everything that's like was creative. I wasn't really focusing on anything, just did creative stuff. Then I was a freelance creative director when it was time for me to leave my country and live in Europe a little bit. So I've been living in Europe and I've been working all over the place, mostly with the nonprofits and creating educational materials, comics, documentaries. And this is where I started producing visual effects. It was like passionate affair, and this is something that I still really, really love. And that was kind of the the start of something that would in the future became my real-time media career. Okay, so then in 2014, at the end of the year, I moved to New York as an immigrant and immediately dropped all my like skill development in lieu of learning English and learning how to budget, because everything was so expensive and I didn't get used to everything being that expensive. And also everything was like alien and hard, and communication was hard. And I turned to art, to real-time media and like to the new stuff to just express myself, because I didn't know the language, right? And I wanted to show people what I can do and what worlds I can build, and you know, filming stuff, you know, making films or making documentaries or making comics wasn't as easy. And I started to learn Unity and basics of programming. I started to teach myself just by YouTube and by like online stuff. And I started to develop some stuff and just showing it to people without even being able to explain what it is. But it turns out people are connecting a lot better if they see something. And so it wasn't like a problem, it wasn't a barrier that I didn't know language well. And also that provided me an opportunity to actually talk to people and to learn this language. So that is a slide from my very first game that I made. It's a game about philosophy. And when people were playing it, so I made a lot of friends with people who played that on the playtests. So by 2016, I kind of already understood what I want to do. That has to be real time. It has to be whimsical, playful, creating world. This is something I'm really interested in. So I kind of started to learn how to summarize and sell my experience to survive here. I opened my first studio. That was basically nameless. It was basically me and my husband. And we were just doing, you know, like we were just looking for some like clients and explaining them what we can do. And kind of getting gigs. That was one of my first gigs with Looking Glass, if you know them. It's an amazing company that produces this holographic displays. So we were developing like some characters and some worlds for them that were interactive. So they were like live and they're reacted to your touch and to your like wave, hand waving and stuff like that. So it was a good year. So it was the first game for me, first VR app that was picked up by Miami Museum and shown to like thousands of people. And also I found my first community, which is really important. 2017, I decided that it's like not enough what I have, and I decided to go to school again. So I went to grad school, to NYU, the Game Center, and I got an art degree in game design. So I'm a master of game design. So basically all my tenure there, I was focusing on experimentation. Also through the Game Center, I kind of like met like really cool people from corporations and got really cool collabs. Those kinds of collaboration that really elevate your portfolio and kind of give you a lot of things to show to other people. I was very lucky to win some awards from art institutions, and I really solidified the foundation of game design, world building, technical art, all with focus on XR. So in 2018, my master thesis game got funded by Facebook, and that was my real like first real battle. So before that, we were doing like projects, gigs. They were like 3 months, 4 months maximum, and that was for money. That was like sweatshirt project that we just sell, and like the game took a year, the game took a team, management, marketing, everything. So we did get money, but money was not enough. We still was a small team and we still have to be really frugal with the money and really saving them. So I learned a lot about how to hone interaction skills for VR, expanded my skill set with procedural art creation techniques, and one of the best things I did for myself as a designer is I learned Houdini. Houdini is a 3D software that allows you to design in a procedural way. So you don't have to like manually model like 3D art or assets, you can program them basically. And that saves so much time. And basically, so if you have one team member who knows Houdini, they can replace the whole art team. And that's what we did because we need a lot of art. And Houdini basically saved us. Yeah, that was my real first shipping of the game. Founded Synesthetic Echo, which is my studio. I mean, not founded, but kind of named it. Learned marketing and biz dev, which is really important. It's not thing I want to do. It's just stuff we need to do, you know, to get evolving, to get money, to get funds, to get budgets for projects. Kind of started to learn how to consolidate the worlds in my head with like financial reality. So like project planning, like finances, marketing, partnerships, all this stuff. And I had short affair with teaching. and I realized teaching is not for me, at least not for like share my experience. But teaching us like for a prolonged period of time was just not for me. I just don't have enough patience, and that's okay, I guess. I tried this thing, and it's okay to try things and just drop them, because otherwise, how do you know? Okay, 2020, I don't even want to talk about it. Everyone was just surviving. I was at home. Everyone learned resilience, I guess, so that was the best thing that come out of it. But I really tried to distract myself from all the horrors that were happening in New York. So started to learn shaders and graphic programming just as a pure distraction. Turns out it was really useful and like really cool thing to do. And that was one of the skills I got hired for my current job, which is I am now lead spatial designer at Prisms of Reality. And I also continue to develop my own studio. So in my own studio, I mostly work in like non-commercial collaborations now. So I can fully dedicate myself, like all my spare time, to art. But on my job, I really, really finally understand that I should have personal mission. And one of my things in my personal mission is to help people to change the world, as I said in the beginning. And this was the best team to do it, the most awesome possible people. So my role is to support and inspire team members, other designers, critical system thinking, and I do a lot of hands-on work like in the game engine. So basically designing, programming, creating assets, putting them all together, reacting to the playtests, basically the same stuff as I was doing, but on the bigger level, because we are shipping constantly, we're production, and so currently we have 10,000 of kids playing our stuff. We're solving the problem of lack of proficiency in math in the United States. Young people aren't inspired to learn math. Math education in US is like a disaster. So we are kind of solving that with XR. So our leader was from MIT. She was a teacher, so she knows what she's doing. She has a vision for how to replace the math curriculum with VR games, basically. So we're teaching math through VR games. There are some slides from one of our experiences. So we mostly like ship into schools directly now, but we have one game in the Oculus store called Pandemic by Prisons, which teaches exponential functions on the example of the pandemic and how the viruses go into the population. And this is one, just a short clip of like my recent work. This is a module about statistics. Statistics as like in math and in curriculum. And so first players sort to the landfill to understand how much of the actual trash items goes to the landfill here. So then they kind of go to the landfill site and see like how huge the landfills are and how big this is a problem that population grows. Landfill site grow, but like space is not infinite, it's limited. And then they go to the lab and learn a lesson about like mathematical understanding of this growth of the landfills and how it corresponds to the population growth. So we're basically trying to teach math on the real life examples, but in each real life example, you have some like kind of magical power that you can only have in VR. So I'm almost at the end. Yes, so let's keep in touch about anything. That's my Twitter, email, website. We are hiring, by the way, so if you want to try yourself on the website. So now I'm opening to questions. So any questions about like skills, about like particular learning paths and like how to survive, how to grow, stuff like that.
Thank you so much for this. I think something that's so interesting about your story and that's really relevant to this group is something that we talked about on the phone a few months ago, Maria, is that as an immigrant coming to the US, you've been tremendously successful. You've gone on to get your master's degree, you've opened your own studio, you've gotten coverage in the press. The way which I know Maria is that I covered a game that she released as a journalist, and I was really blown away by what she did on her own. I think you only just had one other main collaborator, and then a few other designers that he might have worked with. But that was for the haircutting.
Yeah.
So that being said, Maria's story, I think, is so relevant to all of yours because she came to the US and was, figuring out within the tech space, and specifically creative technology, and in New York. And I think given the overlap all of you have, being established in France, but having, Antoine, we were talking about yesterday, and we have another participant who couldn't be here today, but he's done American festivals. I'm sure several of you also have. But actually starting a company here is a whole other adventure. So if anyone has questions about Maria's story, I think it's so relevant to everyone.
I have a question, two questions. Do you make only serious game, and do you sell your game to institute, organization, schools, or individual people, like players?
I don't like the term serious games.
I don't like to. It's what I want to talk about.
I just prefer to call them games, or I don't like the word gamified. It's just game or not a game.
Me too.
So it's games. They sometimes teach people something in particular, but I believe all games teach people something important.
Okay.
So we do sell to the, in my main job where I work in, I'm a lead designer, we sell directly to schools on the school level, on the district level. That means we're selling basically everything. It's a package. It's VR headsets in the game, and the updates and the support and everything. So they can just play it and don't worry about anything. But we also plan to, we already have some products for consumer, for home learning and home education. And it's not only for kids, people who want to refresh high school math can also do this. It's basically algebra 1 and 2, and probably going to be calculus at some point. So it's both. Yeah, directly to the businesses, to schools, not businesses, institutions, and to the consumers.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Also, as well, Maria, I'm very curious how you started building connections when you first got to the US. And I'm sure that you had already established those while you were working in Europe as a creative director. But when you actually got to New York, in my opinion, and as an American, but a creative, New York can be so dense and it has so many wonderful, amazing people, but you kind of have to, prove yourself when you get there. What were some of the communities that you first connected with when you arrived?
I think it was a creative coding community, which is right now mostly non-existent in New York because everyone left or everyone is doing something else. But in 2015, it was really strong movement, all the creative technology people. And that was everyone, starting from people who doing some just little experiments at home with Arduinos and wherever, to huge studios that are engaging in huge projection mapping that's interactive and hosts thousands of people. The cool thing was that you could get all these people together in one room and talking to each other. And also they somehow let me in as well into this community. And that was very, very valuable for me to see how this technology, how these tools can be used on so many different levels. And you can go wherever you want from here. So we work with agencies, we work with the individuals on more artistic collaborations. We work with art institutions and nonprofits. So we tried everything. I tried to not limit myself to some one sort of experience. I know people who like working with agencies and it's a good money and they just do it, or people who work exclusively with artists and trying to sell their projects as an art. But I tried everything.
Yeah, I'm also curious your perspective on building for American audiences. And I know not all of your pieces, your personal pieces, are solely created just for Americans because you are located in the US. But do you feel like you had to consider certain things when launching experiences in the United States? Especially in English?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would more say it's not so much as Americans as like some cultural unit, right? So people are people and people love mostly the same thing. But what I really want to say that American audience in terms of like video games and like VR projects is really spoiled by like super polished quality of it. So like most of the people like polished and stuff. A lot of people like more of the mainstream stuff, such as like less experimentation with like visual styles, for instance. I know for sure, you know, certain visual styles would be off-putting for people who like deep into the video games. And so a lot of like my contemporaries, my colleagues, and even kids in America, they have really good knowledge of like video game everything, basically. Video game skills, video game glossary, they understand video games, right? So they kind of got used to certain types of visuals and like scenarios. So if you want to make your game like widely commercially successful, I think it allows like less experimentation than, for instance, European people. I would say like for Europe, people are welcoming experimentation, especially like visual styles. I know you guys have like government funds to do that, which is like super awesome. So here it's like wild capitalism, and whatever was successful before will be successful after. And it's really, really hard to like break out with something entirely new and experimental, unfortunately. Which is, I'm not saying it's not possible. Everything's possible. It's just something I noticed and something I think about when I make like games for American audience.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it is really valuable to hear that. And also for just personally, I think it's interesting to hear kind of a generalization, but a cultural difference between acceptance of experimentation versus highly polished pieces that seem to get the most attention here. And I definitely would say I agree with you. Having worked in tech for several years now, there is a huge push in the US that things have to look so polished and really clean, and that there's so much focus on it. So sometimes I feel like that detracts from seeing the potential in a project. Does anyone have questions about that, particularly coming, you know, to the US and a shared experience that you have with Maria?
I can answer the question in the chat. Getting out of AAA mode is difficult. No, not even AAA. Even indie games require like immense level of polish. So you have to be like super creative with your like resources to achieve this level of polish. And when we're talking about VR, that's like entirely different dimension of like polish and everything. But yes, even indie games, that's why everyone is looking for the publishers, and no one like self-publishes anymore, because you will need money, you will need marketing, you will need a lot of polish.
Okay, polish, not in the game, around the game, like in commercial or whatever.
Both.
Both, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, maybe even more important for indie games, because AAA can, you know, afford like to write on the previous reputation, and for the new indie creators, it's ever more important to like churn out this like highly polished and big experiences. It is really hard.
I would say the exception to that, and it's not really an exception. It's a little bit of a trick. I'm sorry, I'm slowly getting eaten by sunlight. But I worked at a studio a couple years ago, and it was a very, very small studio, and the main developer and was also the lead designer. I mean, this was such a tiny bootstrapped indie team, and we didn't have enough budget to get a prototype out that was really polished. So we had to make a use case why it looked very low poly. And we built that rationale into the game. We're like, this is low poly for X, Y, and Z reason, with the intention that we would get funding and then we would increase the graphics and improve it. But people got really excited about the storyline that we made as an excuse for why it was lower graphics, and it never changed. And we actually launched the title. It was very successful, and we never really improved the graphic style because we were able to justify it within the larger narrative of the world. And this goes back to Lauren's trash portal from the other day. I think it's really important when you think about the ways in which you have resources and how you'll utilize them. And if you can come up with a creative way to justify certain creative choices, you can find success. So that's kind of the one exception to the rule. But please know, I'm not disagreeing with Maria on this. I think that she's absolutely correct with the standard of quality that is expected within the US, unless you can find an interesting way around that. Cami, my partner, has a question as well in here. What are the main strengths to develop as an XR creator in the US and also a game creator? Because I know, Maria, you wear all the hats.
Yeah, I like last 3 or 4 years, I was mostly focusing on like XR, and now I'm mostly focusing on VR though, but I'm getting back into the art. So I can, yeah, I think I can speak to both. So for as a game developer, so you want to be, I guess it's for both. So you want to be like, if you're indie, if you're not going to work for AAA company, you want to be T-shaped skill. So T-shaped skills, that means you are, you have wide range of skills, right? Like a T. So you can support any team member basically, but your like pillar, this part of the T, your pillar is something that you do really well, like your personal strength. So for me, it's design. So I'm a like pretty decent designer, interaction designer. And my like T-stick is that I am can program, I can manage, I can basically do like all kinds of producers work. I don't like to do it, but I have this experience. So I think one of the main strengths is like to have this like T-shaped skill set, and it doesn't mean that you have to have like a certain, a certain skill, but you have to have a set of skills that is diverse enough to allow you to thrive. Because like the only company really that will be interested in like expert knowledge will be probably Facebook. So they're hiring for like expert knowledge in something. So you can be like a network programmer for XR and you can get a job at Facebook. But like almost all the companies who are smaller, wherever they do, and whether it's like game studios or whether it's like enterprise training, for instance, or like enterprise development, or serious games or wherever. So they will need you to wear many hats. They will need you to be technical. That's like absolutely for sure. And I mean, technical is like, you don't have to be, you don't have to be a programmer, right? But you have to be like enough entrenched, enough to understand the technology and to understand how it's working, to be able to explain it, to be able to communicate with all the team members about it.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think it is a unique perspective and beneficial for this group to hear. Are there, I want to double check, any other last questions or comments before we have to end our talk with Maria? And our next speaker, Britton, just arrived. And Maria, you are more than welcome to stay and listen to the next talk if you want to, or run off to the busy day of meetings and work that I'm sure you have. Oh, Jean just jumped in.
It's not a question. Don't worry.
Yeah, technical designer is something that's really important. So I basically like, I am a lead special artist now, but I do technical art every day. So there is no day that I don't do technical art, something like related to it. And it's really cool because everyone has something they like to do, whether it's animate or draw or texture or model, and everything is like technical art and technical design.
Thank you for sharing.
I think so too.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. It was really nice to learn about your projects. I wish you big luck. I'm pretty sure you all succeed. I got really excited, like reading the description even. So yeah, please feel free to like contact me with any questions and anything.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. I forget if I told you, Maria, but you came with tons of encouragement from David Liu. He got really excited. He's like, you have to contact Maria, reach out to her. David's a wonderful guy within the New York XR community, also on the West Coast too. But yeah, I'm really glad that you could come to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. And we'll jump immediately into our next talk. Lovely, wonderful friend of mine and a tech industry colleague, Britton Heller, is joining us today. She works as legal counsel for a variety of companies and has lots of stories, all the stories, a very colorful career. The way in which we connected was a few years ago at a writer's retreat in Montana, where we were trying to tell stories to address prejudice using mixed reality. So talking about storytelling and how do you use really interesting ways in which to connect with your audience to address social issues. With that, Britton's going to go into a deeper dive on her career and her work. And I specifically asked her here today for all of you to understand certain considerations, at least thinking of them now while you're in pre-production, about the legalities of working in the United States, safety concerns for your participants, considering data collection, etc. So thank you, Britton, all you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm talking to you from San Francisco, so I'm going to be leaning on this a lot.
Welcome.
Thank you. It is an honor to be invited to talk to you all today, and I'm really excited to be here. We have about a half hour left, so I think what might be useful today is I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my career and how I never intended to ended up where I am. And if you don't know where you're going, that's really okay. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the story of how I started to combine human rights and technology, because I really haven't met a lot of other attorneys who have that emphasis. And then we'll talk kind of collectively about what a vision for inclusive XR design with human rights at the core could look at. And through that, I'll describe a couple of the projects that I've worked on and collaborated with people, and that kind of really exemplify this. And then we can talk about some really concrete legal and design tips that may help you concretely with your projects. Does that sound like a good game plan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
All right. So like Dara said, I am counsel at Foley Hoeg, which is a law firm. It's a global law firm, so we have an office in Paris, and I'm part of the global business and human rights practice. They also share me with privacy and data security. And so as a part of that job, I advise some of the larger XR clients like Reality Labs, I guess former Facebook Reality Labs, they don't really know what's going on, and Niantic, and some of the, and I work with a lot of startups as well who are kind of in the digital humans space, or trying to generate types of AI to move their business into Web3. So it's really interesting stuff, but it didn't always, I wasn't always focused on that. I went to law school at Yale and had an experience there that kind of shifted everything I thought my life was going to be. So I went to law school to try to become an international human rights lawyer. That's what I had always wanted to do. And when I was studying for the test that you take in the United States to get into law school, something happened that kind of threw all my best laid plans into the bin. There was this young man in the study group for the test. It's called the LSAT. He kept asking me out on dates, and I kept saying no. And then we got our results from the test, and I had gotten into the top law school in the country, which was his dream school, and he didn't. And then the next day, things started showing up on the internet. There was a message board, and it said it was about law school admissions, but it really wasn't. It was a forum where people were basically being attacked for their race, their ethnicity, their religion. There's lots of misogynist and homophobic content, and I wasn't a part of this online forum. This was back in the mid 2000s, so right before Twitter, thankfully, and I wasn't a part of it. So I just thought, this is quite. No, we are not talking about 4chan, and I'm explicitly not saying the name of it because I don't like giving it publicity. As you'll see, they kind of use the publicity that was generated to make profit, and so I don't like participating in that. The first post that showed up was called "Stupid Bitch to Attend Yale Law." And I read it and was just kind of horrified for a couple of reasons. One was it, sorry, I'm just making sure I track the chat, keep the chat up. One was it had all these allegations about me that were just ridiculously untrue. But later on, people would say, like, why would anyone even start to make those allegations? Like, it said that I had bribed my way into school with money or with sexual favors, that I'd had a lesbian affair with the dean of admissions, that I was a Muslim terrorist, that I pretended to be a minority, that I was functionally illiterate. Lots of things that were just odd. And then somebody pretended to be me and respond back in a very immature and awful way. So I saw that and thought, wow, that's awful. Ugh. I actually heard about it when people who I knew who were admitted to the school started saying, good job fighting back against those trolls. And I had to say, I have no idea what you're talking about. Eventually, I wrote the people who ran the website and said, hey, would you just mind like taking this down? This is really bizarre and strange. And then I forgot about it for about a year and a half. At that time, I started applying for jobs like you do in an American law school. And I was a very attractive candidate. You know, I was from an underrepresented background. I helped the diversity of firms. I had perfect grades. I was the editor of the Law Review, and I couldn't get a job. And eventually one of the firms said to me, like, well, have you ever Googled yourself? And that sort of harassment had continued in the background for the last year and a half, and I hadn't known it. And so what started off with one post turned into thousands. And the firms said things to me like, well, we'd love to hire you. And if you can get your Google search cleaned up, then we're happy to bring you on. So I wrote the people at the website again and said, like, hey, it's having an impact on my real life. Would you mind putting in this one line of code? This one line of code will de-index it from Google, and you can keep doing and saying whatever you want. And they didn't do anything. At the same time, they started a Girls at the Top 14 Law Schools contest, where they invited people to follow around women at their law school and take pictures, because under American law, if you take a picture, you own the copyright. So you can do whatever you want with it. And they started putting up, my picture ended up on crime scene photos because I'm one of the luckier ones. That they would put the entreaties of women underneath, and they'd say things like, who are you? Why are you doing this? I don't understand. These pictures aren't me, my family, my church, my community, my job. Why do you want to ruin my life? Because the people thought it was funny. They also were getting revenue about revenue. So the more salacious the content on the website, the more people would come to it, and the more they'd interact with it, the more money they would make from the Google ads. I ended up writing the website one last time and saying, like, look, this is really unacceptable. please do something. And they wrote back, First Amendment rights, you're going to have to sue us. Under US law, there's this section called, it's called Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act of 1996. And what it means is that internet companies are not legally liable for the content that they host. And this protects bloggers in the same way that it protects Google. So the legal responsibility for content lies with the person who posts the content, not the website that hosts it. And so when they said First Amendment, I also thought, wait a minute, I'm a law student, and I know the First Amendment doesn't protect against true threats, and I know the First Amendment doesn't protect against defamation. And I also know that companies aren't bound by the First Amendment. It's really protects people against overreach of government speech. So I said, yeah, I have to sue you. Oh, okay. So I got pro bono counsel from Stanford and Yale, and gathered together the other Jane Does, and we filed a suit, and I announced it on the front page of the Washington Post. The suit went on for about 2.5 years, and things got a lot worse before they got better. I was a Jane Doe, which under US law allows you to have your identity protected, but the people on the website figured out who I was and did something called doxing. And if you're not familiar with that, that means they take people online will find your personal information, like your name and your address, your phone number, and your social security number, and your license plate, and your class schedule, and what you're wearing that day. And they'll put it all online for everyone to read and tell people to let her know how you feel. So I was constantly getting strange phone calls from people, getting weird packages sent to my apartments. The FBI had to escort me to final exams. It got to the point where I had to take time away from school because the local police department said they couldn't ensure my safety anymore due to the amount of threats about sexual and physical harm. Somebody sent a letter to the law firm that did take a chance on me, to every one of the hiring partners and the managing partners, and sent a copy to every professor they could find at my law school. And it was an indictment of my crimes against men, full of strange allegations, but again, really distressing to people who didn't know what was going on. This went on for a while, and I eventually decided to settle the case. People thought it was going to go to the US Supreme Court, and I didn't want it to, because I didn't want to basically create bad law. We filed the suit to figure out whether or not a person who is undergoing this kind of unwanted attention could get redress through US courts. And the answer was immediately no. I had resources that most people don't have, because the news thought it was very notable that somebody from the top school in the country would file a suit against their the website and their school and all of that. Most people don't have this. I got over $1 million US of pro bono assistance. Most people don't have this. And eventually I was able to settle the suit. And most people don't have the kind of harm that I have that allows you to file a suit. I could prove that this is why I wasn't getting jobs, and most people don't have that direct link or that monetary harm. Here's the part where it gets really interesting for all of you. As part of the settlements, I was able to meet with the people that we'd identified as harassing me. And that was what I wanted. I didn't want money. I didn't want the website to go down. So I negotiated with them and basically helped them develop a content moderation scheme with on topic and off topic. And on topic was about law school admissions and help them get their Google ads back for that. Off topic was de-indexed from Google, and they could keep doing or saying whatever they wanted as long as it was in their own little sandbox and didn't hurt anyone. And so as we identified people who were doing the harassment, I got to sit down with them and talk to them about it. And they all said the same thing. They said, you know, it was just a game. I don't know you. I just, you know, I didn't think about it. And I didn't realize it was impacting someone's real life in this way. And I'm so, so sorry. These were people I'd never met. They were from all across the country. They were men and women. They ranged from 17 to retiree, from high school dropout to postdoctoral pediatric AIDS researcher. So it was really like a wide swath of American society. And I thought it was very notable that they all talked about the dehumanizing impact of the web forum. And that's kind of what engendered the ability to do this to a stranger. So I'd gone to law school with the intent of practicing international criminal law. And I was really angry for a while because I thought that this had derailed my best plans and all of my work. And it turns out that it actually just put me ahead in looking at a new way that human rights impacts us through technology. So I was hired by the International Criminal Court after I finished school. I went back and became one of its first prosecutors. From there, I went to Afghanistan and opened up a law school. I went to Korea and I worked with North Korean refugees. I went to the US Department of Justice and prosecuted genocide and war crimes and took on a special role looking at the impact of technology on major human rights abuses. After that, I moved to Silicon Valley and I started the first civil rights and technology center located in the Valley itself to work with companies to try to help them address issues related to all types of discrimination and bias. And after that was our stories for another time, but it was very interesting to be part of that during the Donald Trump era. And then I went into private practice to work with designers and companies and other stakeholders about how to actually use this new technology proactively to have a pro-human rights and pro-civil rights stance. So I thought it had, I thought it had ruined everything, but it actually just showed me new opportunities. And I'm going to stop at this point for questions because everybody always has questions, and I guarantee you that you don't have a question somebody else hasn't asked me before. So you're not going to trigger me, or you're not going to upset me. Most people who go through something like this, one, don't talk about it, and two, don't win the case. So if you have any questions, please feel free. And if you don't, that's all right too.
Actually, I was wondering, what is your vision today on these matters? Do you think there are solutions and that it can be get better?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think XR is a great way to actually get at these issues. So if we don't, I'll wait to see if we have any more questions, but then I think with the last bit of time, we can move into talking about how you can structure an XR experience to sort of build in these reminders that there's a person on the other end of the interaction. And that really does have an impact on reducing the incidence of things like this. I can also describe for you a couple projects that I've worked on and collaborated with other technologists and artists on that do this really well. So if you have any more questions, you can put them in the chat or you can just interject. But
I know, Leah, you raised your hand.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. You were just writing, so I saw her hand.
But I was wondering if you think that this inclusion and being cautious to what we say to each other, we have to be very careful for that as creators of XR in general, or especially when it's social experiences, or is it both of them?
I think it's both of them. So a lot of my work now focuses on how XR interacts with your neurology. So how does your brain interpret an XR experience as opposed to an experience in physical reality? And the reason I think XR is so interesting is because your brain processes it in the same way that you create memories in physical reality. I've done studies about harassment in virtual reality, and people report that it feels just like an assault. If they are, because your brain responds to the act of violence, not the content of the XR experience. And most people who work on content moderation focus on the content of the experience and not the interpersonal interaction. So looking at XR, if you're moving from social media to this new medium, it's important to understand that you actually are creating a new reality for somebody to embody. And that's how your brain interprets it. So if you think about it that way, it's not just social experiences, it takes it to a new level. And I've also been doing work on advertising in XR and what it looks like. People were very upset that Meta was going to put advertising in XR, but if you actually look at the way that it's manifested so far, there's already advertising in XR. It just doesn't look like, yes, Meta equals Oculus equals Facebook. Thank you. It doesn't look the way we expect it to look from social media. You know, it's when you create a digital jacket from Gucci for your avatar, that's an advertisement for Gucci. When you're creating a digital performance for by a musical artist, it's actually an advertisement for that artist and their brand. The difference between advertising in XR and social media is that people in XR seek these experiences out for their entertainment or artistic value. In a US context, it's like if every ad on the television was like the Super Bowl, with a lot of thought and engagement placed into it. And a lot of people don't consider those to be ads, but they are highly persuasive, and brands are using those to kind of push their experience. So when right now my work, that's a really good question. Right now there aren't rules against certain things that I think are risk factors in XR for human rights. One is there's no rule that I can find anywhere against the collection and application of biometric information and combining that with advertising. I call that biometric psychography. The way that...
Sorry to interrupt. Does everyone know what biometric data is?
So biometric data, at least under US legal regimes, is information about your body that can uniquely identify you. So your fingerprints or your eye scan, or in XR, it actually you can be uniquely identified by the the way you tilt your head and the way you point, or by 5 minutes of movement. You can be uniquely identified in a crowd. Under US law, that's tied to your identity, but in XR, people really know who you are. They know who you are. There's not, most people will access XR through major platforms. So they have a billing address and a credit card. I'm more worried about these measurements that you take to make the headset work, like your eye tracking, and having that be used to gather information about you that you don't mean to give away. So your eye tracking can give away information like sexual attraction to another person, or whether or not you're being truthful, or whether or not you will develop certain neurological ailments like schizophrenia, ADHD, or Parkinson's disease. People don't intend to give that information away when they play a game or go into a virtual experience. So I think that the law hasn't caught up yet. The protections around biometric law don't apply because they protect your identity and not your thoughts. That was a little bit out there, but I'm going to go back to some of the design tips because you all make these experiences. So one tip would be to think about the data that you're collecting and ask technical partners where the data is being stored, how long the data is being retained. Is the data being stored on the device, which is a best practice, and where, and if there are any individual laws like the GDPR or NetzDG that will help give you guidance on this in the audiences that you're going to be distributing this in. That's really important information. The second is going to be that the number one factor for somebody being harassed in XR on social media, on anything, is one, their gender identity, and two, their racial or ethnic background. So think about if your experience is giving that away in a way that somebody does not consent to. There's been a lot of interesting outcomes that I've seen from people not thinking design decisions all the way through. One, this really impacts the transgender community disproportionately. So one talk that I went to was by a professor, and she was transgender, and she actually started crying in the middle of the talk when somebody asked her about this question, and she described how every time she goes to the airport, it takes 2 to 3 hours. Because when the designers who make the scanners, you have to pick a male or a female form for somebody's scan to be imposed on. And no matter which one was selected for her, it showed irregularities. Because they didn't just design it with a neutral human form. And so with the irregularities, the professor had to go into secondary screening and tertiary screening. So always took hours, and meant that they had to be physically patted down and searched every time they wanted to travel. And if you just think about how that impacts somebody, because people were thinking in a binary. They weren't thinking about a continuum of gender expression. If you look at the sociology behind online systems, and this extends to XR, and this is also a fun game at your next dinner party. About 10% of any population will show signs of being a sociopath. So these asocial behaviors, and about 3% of people will show clinical signs of being a sociopath. These are the people who tend to troll for fun, or really poke and be provocateurs. My question is, most systems design for that 3%. Do you want to design for the 3% or for the 97%? And by that, I mean, how can you use or build in something that I call productive friction into your experiences? And a good example of this is actually an experience that Dara produced and worked on called Where Thoughts Go. And it creates these orbs where you share your answer to increasingly personal questions. And I remember I asked Dara and the rest of the team, how do you prevent people from abusing the system? And some of the answers that I got back were, I think, really indicative of best practices here. One is if somebody took the little orb and started to punch it or kick it or physically abuse it, the response was a giggle like a baby. So it really set people aback if they were to do something like that. So you can use unexpected responses to help people become aware of their interactions. Additionally, the orbs had these big blinking eyes like Mickey Mouse. And research shows that using eyes actually helps rehumanize design. It's very interesting that people respond to it even in a digitized or a cartoon form, like Where Thoughts Go. So if you think about video game design, most times the villains have these squinty little eyes and you can't see them, because when people interact with each other, eye contact is how we communicate emotionally. So you can look at design decisions like that. Additionally, you can remind people that they're making choices. And I think there are very interesting possibilities for this in XR. Some of the projects I've worked on, and I realize time is up, so I'm going to be brief. One of them is a data visualization of all of the hate crimes in the United States, taking that whole body of law enforcement statistics and putting it in an interactive form in XR so that people can scroll through the different types of hate crimes. They can look at the trends in the data and actually go to their hometown or their state and experience it. And I put law enforcement trainers into the program, and they all said that yes, and being seen with the eyes. That's a very good takeaway from that. But putting the data interaction into XR allowed people to interact with it in a way that was personalized. And people who'd been training on hate crimes for 20 years got new insights out of it. And it was just because they weren't reading it or writing it, but they had to spatially engage with the data. I'm currently working on a project with the city of Chicago, trying to use AR as a community violence reduction technique. And I really like this. This is an art walk, taking the African-American community and the Latinx community and having creators create these shoes that will have embedded AR layers. And it basically takes you from one community into the other, because people don't do that. And they all end up in the same public space. And we think that getting people interacting with others will actually, the thesis is that it will reduce community violence, because you get to see the other people's neighborhood and look them in the eye. The final bit of design advice I have for you is to, again, make people understand they make choices. So there was this study where designers put up these little signs in a hotel bathroom. And the sign said, please reuse your towel. And about 40% of people reuse their towel. When they changed and personalized it and said, 60% or 50% of people decided to reuse their towel. Please reuse your towel. Then adherence went up and more people did it. But they found that 80% of people reused their towel when it was personalized. And they said half of the people who stayed in this hotel room chose to reuse their towel. Please reuse your towel. So they were able to get people to take simple actions to help promote environmentalism when they made it, when they personalized it and made people aware that that was a choice that they were making. And I think that you see similar things when you ask people who show signs of aggression online through automate like AI content moderation tracking. If you ask them just to chill out or take a pause, they find that hate speech and harassment can go down about 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5 people will choose to not share hate speech or harass others if given an opportunity to reflect. So that's a lot of things that I threw at you that seem kind of connected, but I really hope that sharing the personal experience and then some of the research gives you a different way to think about the work that you're doing, where every time you create an opportunity for people to interact in XR, you're giving them a chance to learn from each other and to basically emphasize their shared humanity in a forum that allows you to be creative with it. You know, even if we all look like flying toasters, there's still aspects that we can connect on in XR. So I'm going to ask if Dara would share my contact information. Please feel free to email me or tweet at me, or I'm happy to talk to you about your individual projects and brainstorm with you. I'm really excited that the sponsors of this event think that a human rights approach to this is important enough to present to you. So thank you all very, very much. And it's been great talking to you this morning.
Thank you for
Thank you.
sharing your story.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. You, I think, had very briefly mentioned to me parts of the case that you had discussed earlier, but I didn't know all the details about it. And I think given all the hell it gave you also a lot of understanding of the importance of seeking justice and bringing people together to do right and do good and address these things. And in the time I've known you, you are so focused on civic good and social impact. And I think it makes such sense that given your expertise and your career, that you are also part of an emerging industry that does have its roots. And I am also referencing gaming in a way, even though gaming is an older community, an older industry, older quotes, it still is rooted in play, or it's still rooted in joy or community connection. And it's ultimately what we do with this technology and these stories. And even if some of the stories are not all about joy and fun, and even if they're not all childlike, I think that there are ways in which we can build all experiences and move through the world that consider the impact we have on people. And I really, really wanted to bring you in for a talk, and I really wanted to bring you in specifically on the last day, Britain, because I want everyone here, when you're thinking about designing your game, to really consider how it's going to impact the people that you're asking to play it. You're asking them to give you time and energy and involvement and engagement. And to understand you're possibly collecting their data. Where is that going? What's going to happen to it? Even if your intentions are good, there should be an answer to that question. Where is this information going? And even if you want to give them an experience that is you know, very heavy or very intense. We have a project in this group. I know, Britton, you had looked through the projects, but one of them specifically has a lot to do with mortality and losing a loved one. And, you know, that how do you consider the impact that's going to have on someone when they walk away? You know, I would appreciate knowing what I'm going to emotionally experience before I get into the headset for something like that. So, you know, these are just some examples, and the ones that you gave, your design recommendations are fantastic. I know we have a little bit of time. I understand that you might have to jump into meetings and stuff, because again, all these wonderful West Coast speakers waking up so early for you guys. You're so lucky. I'm so lucky. Thank you for saying yes. Yeah, you're amazing. So any other questions before we have to let Britton go?
It's not a question, but it's very interesting because in our project with Jeanne, it's a game. It's not a XR, but we have a duo mode where two people can play the game even if they don't know each other. And we were thinking about that. We don't want there is a place for hate and anything. So the idea we have is to make the communication by microphone, but with a changing of voice, without knowing if it's a girl, a man, or age. You understand?
Yes. Or accent, or genetics, or we have a communication role. No, not a role. Sorry. Will. Thanks. Not role. And you don't have to speak with the will. They just show something and have some emotion with that. But the microphone and the transformation of the voice can avoid some discrimination, like you said. But we want your expertise.
I would love to talk with you more about that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much
for offering your contact information for everyone.
And do you want to share it, or should I just put it in the chat?
Oh, I can share it out. We have a Discord, and I
Okay.
can share it there, and I can follow up with that. But would email be best, or do you want Twitter? Or
email and Twitter?
Okay.
And then we can schedule time for video early in the morning.
Well, maybe when everyone comes to New York, it'll make scheduling a little easier for the month of February. Yeah, there's wonderful. I hope you don't mind me sharing. Isabel just separately messaged me and was like, I really want to talk to her. So yeah, I really appreciate this feedback. I think as well, and this is my bias where I sit in this program as the curator for all the sessions. I think it is so important from the get-go to not only consider what you want as an artist and want to communicate or convey or show, but to also really think about what your project is going to mean to someone once it leaves your hands. And there's a concept that I'm sure exists in France, and I don't have the translation. Cami, if you do, Cami is my producing partner, Britton. If you know the concept of death of the author, is anyone familiar with that? I'm sure there's the correct translation, and I will go find it. But basically it says that no matter your intention as the artist, once you let your work into the world, other people will interpret it, and they will take away from it what they understand contextually from their perspective. So that doesn't mean that you have to bend your artwork to fit anyone else, but it does mean you have to consider how it will be received. And I think that we can have a lot more of a magical, playful world if we do consider other people's feelings. And this is why these talks, especially from a legal expert, where you have, like, I think a lot of people have a picture that things focused within the realm of legal discussion and sitting down and working with lawyers are not going to always have empathy tied to them. And I think so much of your work bridges that gap so obviously, that you're using law to create empathy and human connection. And that's my favorite part of your work. I think it's really cool that you do that. So you are rare in that case from my own understanding of law and some of the lawyers I've worked with, where it's just like, okay, just get this done, on to the next thing. It's like, no, you really have to consider the important impact here. Other groups that I highly recommend for everyone to look into, and I'd be curious about your opinion on this, Britton, the Humane Center for Technology. What do you think?
Probably not for policy advice, but for
not for policy, but considering the impact of tech.
Yeah. I think they're a good one. I also really like the work of a professor out of Cornell, and he has. I'm going to look on my phone to make sure that I get the name of his organization right. His name is Professor Nathan Matias, Matias, and he's at Cornell University. J. Nathan Matias. He runs the Citizens and Technology Lab, the CAT Lab, and he does some of the most interesting work on content moderation. And basically, I keep going back to content moderation. Anytime you're setting rules for how people can interact in your experience, it's content moderation, because content is behavioral in XR. Their mission is to work with communities to study the effects of technology on society and test ideas for changing digital spaces to better serve the public interest. So it's really interesting work. And he's worked with subreddit communities that create their own rules to talk, and studied the impact of community rulemaking and community enforcement in a way that nobody else has. It's really cool stuff. And he's also one of the nicest people you will ever meet. So if you're interested in some of the scientific research behind how people interact in a digital space, he's the first one that I go to.
What is the university again? You said Stanford?
Cornell.
Cornell, excuse me.
Cool.
I will find that in my millions of tabs that I have open from today.
I will send it to you.
Okay.
Because you have millions of tabs open. But the fact that he was looking at Reddit as kind of like the live laboratory for how people interact, I think is really inspirational. And how to encourage communities to take responsibility for their online engagement. So I've just texted you the link to it.
Yeah, thank you again for this. Does anyone have any last questions, or Britton, do you have any other points that you want to add in, or any advice?
The best advice I have is to listen to your users.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can create systems to get feedback from your users on the games, and a kind of a continual means of feedback, they will tell you what they need. And that's starting at the design process, but also going through with gameplay. So I'm a little jealous that I have to go write legal memo today, and you're all going to talk about how to build magical worlds.
You could stay.
I could stay, or I could have a second cup of coffee. So
I'm just saying. This Britton's point goes back to something that I know a few of you have done in the past, but I want to emphasize again what I forget which speaker said it the other day, but make sure you are playtesting. Make sure you are having people throughout your design and production process giving you feedback on the game, how it works, even if it's an art piece. as a game, and it's really just your perspective, getting any feedback about playability, about the UX of it, about comprehension. Do they need more information from the get-go or at a certain point? Try to always incorporate getting people to test, and ideally having a balance of, you know, people that you know will really be honest with you, and then also complete strangers who are just jumping into the experience. I know for myself, there's an experience I worked on at a studio, and we did a playtesting session pretty late in the process. This was one of the first projects I had worked on in tech. And we found out that the way we had designed it and the type of headset we were using could not accommodate certain hairstyles. And it just completely ruled out an entire group of people. And it was really upsetting to me because I found this out through a friend of mine who had dreadlocks. Does that term translate at all? Does everyone know? Okay, so he had beautiful hair, and it was up in this like huge beehive, like really tall, and he couldn't be part of the experience. And we hadn't considered the impact of different hairstyles, and it was just so upsetting. And that wasn't necessarily the experience we designed, but that was the headset. And so thinking about who you want to give access to these experiences and trying as much as you can, especially if you're using something like VR or, you know, considering accessibility, that's huge here. How do you let people into your experience in a way that really accommodates their needs and gets them to understand what you were trying to do? That's one example. There are thousands, but really important to think about your users from the get-go.
I'm writing a paper right now about accessibility, disability rights on XR. And one of the, I guess I'll just tell you the takeaway for designers is the more choices you can give people, the better. The example I use is one of the first filters that Facebook, Oculus, Meta made was a color blindness filter to try to correct color blindness, because Mark Zuckerberg is colorblind. Yeah, I went to an immersive art experience, virtual Van Gogh, and also realized that in Van Gogh's self-portraits, every one of his pictures has a different eye color. He was also colorblind, and he had epilepsy. And so when you treat epilepsy in his time, you gave people lead-based medicine. And one of the symptoms of lead poisoning is seeing auras around candles and lights and stars. So if you run Starry Night through a filter that corrects for the medicine and corrects for color blindness, it looks like hotel room art. He wasn't just showing his artistic vision of the world. Van Gogh was showing us how he actually saw the world. And if you were to make that experience today in XR and have a filter for it, my question is, why not make the filter run two ways? Why not make it so somebody who was not colorblind could choose to see the world through that perspective? Or why make it a corrective? So the more choices you can give people, the more inclusivity you're going to end up building into your experience, and the more interactivity for different populations. Another quick example was if you look at your phone, one of the reasons that people have moved to facial recognition instead of the fingerprint is that when people get older, their skin smooths and their fingerprints aren't as pronounced. So older people can't use their fingerprint for logins. And that's something that I hadn't really thought about until I put my grandmother into an XR headset. She's 100 years old, and started thinking about the way that she interacts with it and how that is going to be different than my 6-year-old niece or me. So giving people choices is the most human rights centric thing you can do when you're designing an experience.
I'm curious for everyone here who I'm sure uses design in different ways regularly for their work. Are there any very unique design considerations that you've ever come across? I know I'd referenced earlier in the week that I've done set design.
Mhm.
I remember a few years ago, we had built out this experience and no one had thought to consider what about for people, it was an experience where you had to sit on the floor and no one thought to think of people who couldn't easily do that. We were in
Mhm.
such a rush to build that, yeah, you could just put a chair in there, but the chair didn't work with the environment that we created. It was so low, you really had to be on the floor.
Mhm.
And suddenly we had this entire conversation about how do you rework design, and we had to do it. We couldn't just dismiss it. It was necessary. Other things to consider, I worked on projects where it was very low light for VR headsets, and VR headsets are definitely getting better with needing less light or needing less environmental information to still perform. But that was something else to think about, how much light is important within a space. Also, very quickly, just curious, I know our next speaker is running a little bit late. We can I don't know, Britton, if you have to run, but we can all hop off now and go to a quick break. How is everyone feeling? Do you need a break right now, or do you have more questions and want to talk about design challenges?
I unfortunately will need to go. So.
Okay, if you need to run, go for it. In that case, let's wrap up this session and the rest of us can continue conversations about this. But Britton, I think that you gave amazing points that we should all consider. I know this was really insightful for me, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Any final thoughts or questions from anyone? We gotta let her go. No? Okay, awesome. And I will share out your email and your Twitter to everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm so glad you won that case. Yes.
And I'm so glad that that I see people's cats in the background, because I think mine was walking around too. So.
Oh yeah, do you have a cat? I didn't see that. Yeah, I heard your cat talking, Britt. It was great. Well, thank you. Yeah,
thank you, everyone.
We'll catch up soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Belated birthday.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm really glad that you all met Britton. She has some really interesting talks. As far as our next speaker, I know, as I just said, she has a slight scheduling issue, so she's running a little bit late. But why don't we take 5? Go grab some water, pet a cat. I'm gonna get coffee, and I'll see you guys in a few minutes. Sound good? Okay.
Hello, Samantha. Hello, Samantha. I'm Camille. I'm working with Dara.
Oh, hi. She was just calling me. I
Yeah,
had
no
on my
problem.
calendar that it was 11 and I was like still editing. So I apologize.
It's okay. No problem. Actually, it's a coffee break. So they are going to come back
there
in,
she is. She's still trying to reach me.
3 minutes. I think they will come back in 3 minutes.
Oh, good.
Like
I
this.
need
So
the 3 minutes. So that's
just
good.
wanted to welcome you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll take the 3 minutes to do the last editing that I was like, I have 10 minutes. I could totally.
Yeah, you have time, really.
Okay, let me see.
Feel free. You can come back.
No, it's okay. Dara will. I had to get I felt like I needed to I have to be very French. I have to get my
your scarf.
it is a French brand too, so I'll be very
okay.
I'll be very French.
Yeah, now it's French.
Yes, exactly. Dressed for the occasion.
Yeah.
How is it going so far?
It was really great, actually. The week, the day, it's so inspired. It's really amazing speakers. Yeah, I'm really glad to participate.
Sorry that I'm like, I was trying to really customize it for the group, and that's what was taking so long.
Thank you. You are the last speaker, actually, of the week.
Oh my goodness. I don't know if I can.
Oh, it's wonderful. They
Um,
need you, Samantha.
yes, we'll
Hey,
see.
Sam.
Hi,
Hey,
sorry.
Dara.
I had it in my calendar for some reason. I don't know why, as 11, and I've gotten a little too used to with NYU doing things last minute. And so it was like, I have 10 minutes. I'm good.
Did my calendar invite come through? Because I sent
It did, but I didn't look at it and go, oh,
So,
of course
okay.
it starts at whatever time. I just went, oh, it's around then. Okay, I'll be fine.
We're just on a quick 5-minute break, as you can see.
No,
everyone's camera's off. But if you want to, we can start in about 5. And I'm just gonna grab some more coffee.
Yeah, and Dara, to make you like, so that you're like, oh my gosh, what have I done? I've, asked Sam to do it. I will invite you to my deck so that you can breathe deeply.
No. It is all good. I actually got concerned. I was like, is she okay? What's going on? What's wrong? But it's okay.
I'll send you the deck so you can see what I was trying to do and why I was still editing.
No, it's totally okay. I am going to grab coffee. I'm really happy that you're here. I think this is your talk. I'm happy from many perspectives. I'm glad that you're safe and healthy.
No, it's been and this is like not announced or whatever. I have been working. I just signed a contract to write another book. And so I've been sort of like focusing on that and finishing up the class and like all these things sort of all at the same time. And then my nanny had to go like for an emergency back to Guyana, and she's been there for a month now. And then I thought she was coming back on Monday, and she's like, no, 2 more weeks. And then my husband just left to go to Dallas this week. So it was sort of like, Sarah, I can do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it.
Well,
I'll do it, but I'll do it.
I will see you in just a minute. I'm gonna grab.
Okay, go do it.
Grab this. Do you want some coffee? I can grab you some.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
Now here, I have my tea. I probably need more. So I'm gonna make sure that my deck looks okay.
Awesome. Thank you. We will start in, I'll just send that to the group.
Hi.
Hello. Sorry that I was delayed.
Hello. No problem.
No problem.
Yeah,
Don't
I
worry.
said I wore my scarf to be very.
Oh.
It's a French brand, so I'm even.
Oh.
I'm trying to be very,
Oh.
very, very
Frenchy.
My attempt. I can't. I do.
Don't worry.
I actually have many. I have many from this one brand, so I didn't like purposely go and buy for this class. I just happened to have a lot, and it was like I was wearing it anyways, and I'm like, I definitely won't take it off for that. Okay. So let's see. I'm just formatting my stuff a little bit more, and then I'll show. How has the week been? How has the time been?
A big week.
It's a big week? Okay.
There were many great speakers.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we learned a lot of things, of different things.
Awesome. So what I did a little bit today with the with what I put together is I attempted to customize it. So
Perfect.
I won't have attached it. It won't be like exact perfect, but I'm hoping that by including your projects in it, that we'll end up having a little bit more of a dialogue around things. And you might say, oh, that was weeks ago. That is no longer my focus. I've changed, I've adjusted, but hopefully you'll get a sense as to sort of the kinds of conversations and the kinds of like topics that I tend to work with the companies I work with and the classes I teach. So I don't like to just have the same, I don't know, I get annoyed a little bit when somebody does a presentation and it's like, oh yeah, that's the presentation I saw on YouTube that they did 3 years ago. So I guess when do you want to start? Should we start when Dara gets back?
Yeah.
And she's back.
She's back.
You just have to call her and she's here.
Yes, exactly.
It's magic.
By the way, I have to say, Isabel, when I saw your picture, you look like you're like cousins with Dara.
Like the hair. It's the hair.
But it was like seeing it, I was like, Dara, are you asking me to talk to something that you're in, but it's not you, it's like your doppelganger. And they're not. I mean, Dara is very, very unique, but we found the French doppelganger, I guess.
You know what? I look forward to us being confused when we're walking around behind, like with all of the hair down, and people will not know which one, who is who.
And you both right now actually have similar glasses. I actually, because there are so few people in AR and VR, and there's so few marketers in AR and VR, and that like 3 or 4 of us are short, brown hair, like white girls with glasses, that we get credited for each other. That we just get credited for each other's stuff. They're like, I saw your talk, and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And if you stood us next to each other, we wouldn't look alike. I don't think at all.
Who are the other two?
The one who gets it so much, and I'm like right now blanking, she's in Canada. She always does the talks about music. She was just with Microsoft and then is now back on her own again. And I'm tired, so I like the names are.
You're like the one that looks like me. It's fine.
One that looks like me, who always talks about marketing, but she wears dresses and is shorter and is like half my size. And so, but she and I, we just stand there and we're like, we joke that we should do like a digital twin talk together. Like, right. And then it's just, we each talk, but so now you and Isabel can do that too. Okay, so let me
let's get started. Into it. Everyone is back. Wait, is Benjamin also coming back?
I think no. Leah, do you know?
He's not with me, so I don't think he's back. But
okay,
I don't have more information. Sorry,
I wasn't sure if you guys were in the same building. Let's start because mostly everyone is here and everything's recorded, so it's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, they get to hear all of my silly talk. Okay, so I'm Sam, the person that's already been talking, and I have, let's see, 25 slides today. And even though I know that I asked Dara like 6 times what I should be presenting, I don't know if I'm presenting exactly what you should be expecting, but I'm presenting.
Perfect.
Okay, I'm presenting what I do and thinking a little bit about, you know, every time that I present to different groups of people, me as a marketer, I always think of like, who's my target audience? Like, who am I talking to? What kinds of things might they want to get out of the experience? So at the end, At the end of the talk, they're like, oh, either it was enjoyable, which I do try, I have very bad jokes, I do try to make it fun, or maybe you learned a thing, or you just sort of start thinking slightly differently about your project, hopefully in a good way. And so that is sort of my general goal for today. So I will share my screen if I am allowed to. Let's see, I have like many things open.
Yeah, you should be able.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, perfect.
We got it. Okay. Let's see where it went. Okay. So here we go. So this is generally, I mean, this is sort of a little bit of what I said, that we're going to talk a little bit about me, a little bit about you sort of throughout. And it's my understanding of you, which I also think I would like your feedback on, but I also think sometimes it's interesting to get that sort of outside perspective of somebody who's like read about you and what their impressions are. And then talk a bit about like where to start when it comes to sort of marketing or positioning your project. Just to clarify, when I use the term marketing, some people use it differently. I use it in the sort of traditional sense of like if somebody says they're a chief marketing officer. So a chief marketing officer would be talking about, they would talk about PR, they would talk about brand strategy, they would talk about the actual marketing tactics. So when I say marketing, I'm saying it very broadly. What we're going to end up talking about a little bit more is probably technically like strategy, sort of brand strategy, product strategy, even though I might, it might be confusing to use the term marketing. I just have, that's my definition and I sort of stick to it. We'll talk about targets, competitors, positioning, and then getting started. So who am I? There I am. I need Dara to have a new picture of me. But I started a company called Pitch Forward, which if you work in VR, the pitch and the forward are, two of the 6 degrees of freedom. I did the FWD just because I used to be in television and I like the sort of fast forward part of it. As I said, branding and marketing. Somebody at one point called me networker and chief, just because I love meeting new people in the space. I especially love people who are doing the sort of most innovative things, because I sort of like to be next to them. I like to be next to Dara, besides the fact that she's really fun, but she's also just so creative that I sort of like, it's like I'm sort of in the space, makes me feel good to be sort of nearby. And it's the same, like people who can code and develop very well and create new and innovative things, and artists, I just am like, let me help you be the best that you can be and be the most successful that you can be. And that's a little bit why it's sort of, I've talked to somebody once and they're like, you're almost like an emerging tech catalyst. And yes, I'm there not necessarily for like, oh, I'm going to be out there talking to everybody, but I'm out there mainly to go, let me help you all succeed. Let me help the industry succeed. Let's get more people trying these technologies. My company basically is focused on that in terms of working with companies, especially ones that don't necessarily, like they have this amazing technology and they're like, why isn't anybody talking about us? Why haven't they bought our product? I also will get the, why am I not doing a TED Talk? Like they should know that I'm amazing. And usually it's because people don't understand what the technology is, or the company says, oh, we're for everyone, which is impossible. I mean, maybe eventually, but initially it's not. And I sort of work with them to help figure that process out in order to help them succeed. So I looked at like what you guys have been doing. And sorry to say guys, I know that's outdated. I should say people, or I should say something that is showing my age to say guys. So about your opportunities. So when I read up about it, it's inspire you to see and create your opportunity for your video game or your XR, AR, VR experience, and then sort of go from there. So I do have experience globally. I have more experience in the US, some in Europe, but I do have sort of a network around the world. Okay, so now I started using your pictures, and I didn't credit you because it's only you guys in the room. And so I apologize if these are pictures from years ago. This is what's out there on the internet, and I used it. So, but this is only for us. Okay, so where to start? Really, the absolute basic place to start is identify who you want to talk to, understand who you're competitive with, and position your product. Those are like the simplest ways to start. What I've found over and over again, that I'll say, who's your target? And they'll go, I don't know. And your target can be, we're at a hackathon and it's the judges. We're at a film festival and I want to make sure that the people who are in the judging committee understand our project the best. Or it could be, we want to be in all I'm still calling it Oculus. I don't want to say Meta yet. Like the Oculus store, we want to be wherever. And then you say who, and sort of break them up. Competitors also, everybody goes, no competitors. No. Our project is so unique. There's nobody else out there. And I tend to say, no, look at, if you're pitching it to somebody, think about that they're having like 10 pitches that day. And who else is coming in to pitch? And competitors doesn't mean like a bad thing. Usually you need competitors in order to have a market. So don't think of it as like a terrible thing. Think of it as just like who else is out there. Okay. So understand competitors and then position your product. So what is it that is so incredibly unique about what you offer? And so often what people, especially in emerging technologies, will do was they spend most of their time talking about the technology in general, that they forget to talk about what is the difference. What is it that you're bringing to the table that is unique and different? Not in an obnoxious way, like I'm amazing, but just like making it very, very clear over and over and over again how differentiated you are. And that could be, our project uses this unique image capture system, right? And so you don't have to go like, we're amazing, we have this unique image capture system. Instead, you start talking about, well, we've found this image capture system to be really, really help with our storytelling. And then you talk about it so that somebody goes, oh, I wonder if that image capture system is on these other projects. Nope. It's just like, oh, no, yeah, we happen. It's like a humble brag, but it's a way to be able to, sort of talk a little bit about yourself and about what's unique to allow other people to figure out how awesome you are. So these are my really simplified ways to get you to figure it out. And I came up with this after dealing with many not to be named CEOs or heads of divisions that are like, we're amazing. And nobody else is out there. And I just got frustrated one day and basically said, so what and who cares? Like really, at the end of the day, And this is coming from a place of love. It is coming from a place of, I absolutely adore technology, emerging technology, storytellers, artists, like, but at the end of the day, if you don't take that step back and go, who's going to care enough about your project to invest in it, see it, get involved in it, you have to know who is going to care. And you have to be able to answer, so what? So this happens a lot of times with technology companies where they'll put some number-based thing. It's 10 times faster than blah, 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 in like tech speak. And if you go, so what? And if you don't have the answer to that, then you either have to rewrite how you're talking about it, or maybe it gets saved for an appendix or gets, you know, put somewhere else. So this is the way that if you're like, oh, like I love it. It's my, like, all these projects are your babies. Like they are, you're like, don't threaten my project. I love it. It's amazing. And then you just have to go like, okay, deep breaths, deep breaths. So what, and who cares? But be, you know, it's like, it's okay. And it's like, you just sort of move the ego over to the side. And honestly, I have to do this to myself. And sometimes it's okay if I see these questions of Target and competitors and blah, blah. And then it's like, you know, you sort of look off like, blah, blah, blah. And this, for some reason, it just cuts through the ego a bit of the who, what, and so what, and who cares. So the identifying targets, this is, I think I've already sort of said this before. It's like, who are the most likely people to invest in or buy your product, service, story? Like, who do you want to see it? And it could be whoever's taking over Tribeca Film Festival, you know, curation, right? It used to be Lauren Hammonds and be like, okay, what is Lauren like? What kinds of projects? What has he let in before? What are the, and just sort of a bit like if you're applying for a job and you wanted to know, like, what is that company and what are the kinds of things that they do? Or even if you wanted to go on a date with somebody, like, what are they really interested in? What are the blah, blah, blah? And you just figure out a little bit about that. And you figure out, I honestly, in my head, I can't juggle more than 5 targets at a time. I usually prefer to have like 3, and then I can go back and add later, but it's like 3 to 5, like, who are they really? You can say, you can be as broad as like independent festivals that have an interactive element, because I do think that there's probably some similarities across the curation for that. But if you want to go as specific as the Lauren Hammonds of the world or the next Lauren Hammonds, you can, because it just is, it's helpful to do a little bit of, just a light bit of online stalking. Okay, so you don't have to answer all of these questions by any means. There are too many, but it is good to sort of go like, who, you know, who are they? Like, what is it? I'm going to keep using Lauren because I know him and I'm sad that he's leaving. But like, who is Lauren? What is he like? What does he do? What kinds of things does he let into the festival? What are the things that he's really passionate about? And like, does it, you know, you have to sort of think at the same, does it align with what you're doing or what your project is or whatever? You know, and if it were, like I'm working on something that I have to finish after that, where they're trying to focus on educational institutions. So I have to go like, okay, it's not just teachers that they want to sell this to, it's also administration, and it's also, they also want like students to be excited about downloading something, which is a whole other thing because students don't really like to do academic things, but whatever. But just sort of understanding them, and you don't have to have millions of dollars of research to be able to do it. You can learn a lot just from going to somebody's website or looking at their social media and just sort of picking up what makes them unique. And then understand competitors. So, and again, competitors tends to, people get really sort of like, oh, competitors, I have no competitors, it's fine. But it's good to say, like, who would be in the consideration set? Like, who would be the other projects that Tribeca might look at? Like that they would, and you probably know this industry is still small. Like, who are the other? Does Baobab have something that's coming out this year? Is, you know, what else is in that space? You know, I think just for a second, I'm realizing I forgot one thing for targets. You might want to have a partner on your target. Like, so it's partnerships. So if you're doing something in like spatial audio, that you go, who would be a great sponsor? Like, who really is aligned in spatial audio? Who's trying to get the word out in a similar way and trying to find them as sort of, so you would have one of your targets would be like spatial audio companies who might have enough budget to help. And that would be one of your targets. And independent film festivals with immersive would be another, and then something else. Okay, sorry to go back. So competitors, like who else is out there? If you're doing something that's spatial audio, that you could be like, is Jessica Brillhart doing another spatial audio project? I don't have to do a whole lot of digging, but just sort of thinking about what is out there. Mainly the point of doing it is not to make you feel bad. It's not to make you like get that feeling, which I get sometimes, like looking on LinkedIn when I'm like, everybody's doing everything and I'm not doing anything and this is annoying. But instead go, what are you different? How are you different? How can you focus on that difference? And you'd be amazed how, if you look across different companies, and I've had this over and over and over again, companies in AR and VR or emerging tech in general say the same thing. It's like they say the same thing and they say the same thing and they say the same thing. And then usually there's like one company that says something that's like a little different. And not all of those companies have the same product or service. And so by talking and messaging in a way that is differentiated, it allows people to understand what you're doing uniquely, and to be able to sort of compare you to others and say, oh, wow, they're a little bit better in this way. And I didn't even think about that before. And I should really keep my eye on them. I'm going to get to questions in a sec, just because I see the numbers are adding up. And then position your project. So this is like, what is that value? What is that difference? Why now? Why is it important now? Which I think is, you know, investors or a film festival or whatever will be saying, like, how does this reflect, like a film festival, like, how is this reflecting what our goals are as a festival? Whereas an investor might say, we're always looking for this kind of company, you know, but today we're looking for a little bit more like the and I think you had Marco come and talk, right, Dara? So like Marco, even though they're all about AR and VR, like I've said, Marco, who are you looking for? I always know people. And he's like, we want AI. I mean, it could have changed now, but he was like, AI companies, right? So if you come in and you were like, we're hardcore spatial audio, he'd be like, come in and you're like, we're spatial audio, AI, new technology, he'd be like, oh, hello, tell me more. So other thing, great thing to have, and this is so easy. This is like an easy layup. Your origin story. How'd you get to doing the project? It's a great story to tell. When they talk about storytelling, I was always interested in blah, blah, or I had this experience and this got me here. It is especially if you're all storytellers, it is a simple story to tell that brings people into your journey. And I'm sure you'd be amazing at it, of saying like, I saw this, like if any of you seen this, I saw this and blah, blah. Like it doesn't have to be long. It just has to be enough so that the person could be like, ah, I see how you came to your decision. I understand now what that's about, and sort of connects them, because nobody knows your projects as well as you do. And you have to bring them on sort of that journey to understand what you're doing and why it's important to you, but they don't really care so much about why it's important to you, but they're gonna, like, you want to get them to care about it themselves. And so telling that story, understanding what it is that hopefully they'll get that care, that feeling of care. I said sometimes a win is when somebody goes, huh, like that's a win, which is so weird because you sort of like want somebody to be like, amazing, I'm so proud you did this is great, la la la, and it's all they're doing is going, huh, have you ever considered la la la? And that just means that they're now getting invested. They're thinking about your project. They're becoming interested and excited about what you're doing, even though their facial expression might be like, hmm. And especially even if they go like, like they're still thinking, they're thinking about a project. So why is your creative team the best for the job? That's another thing that people tend to forget. And I saw that it wasn't in a lot of your descriptions. But I think that people want to believe not just in that visionary, that person that has that story that's awesome, but that you have the best team for this job. You don't say the word best, but it's implied. You know, it is you showcase the design, you have a little thing of some awards on some slides, you mention, like, it's a little bit of like, allow that target to understand why you're perfect for this. And then how is the technology accomplishing your goals?
Hey, Sam.
Yeah.
Before you go off that point, and I'm sorry to interrupt, I want to emphasize to everyone that this might be a cultural difference, but there's a balance of the American arrogance. I'm not saying, Sam, that you're encouraging that, but I think that coming across.
Oh, no, no,
you're not encouraging arrogance.
You know it, but you allow somebody else to figure it out for them.
There is, I will say this, people who often find success in the US, especially in emerging markets, definitely walk into the room. And I also, as a strategist, because Sam and I overlap a little bit in our work, as a strategist, I encourage my clients to directly make the case for, if you are not chosen or if you're not picked to work on a project, then that person is going to lose out. Like, if you don't pick me,
it's a FOMO.
You're gonna lose out. And so while you guys are not necessarily pitching for clients, you are pitching for publishing companies, you'd be pitching for funding. And there is an attitude in the US of, if you don't pick me, you made the wrong choice. And you have to find the personal balance of not sounding like an asshole, but also making it clear that your voice matters against the competition. And I want to emphasize that because that is probably a cultural difference. And it's something that is well received.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like I had a client once that on their website, like we were doing a whole lot of positioning, and on their website, I noticed like in tiny, tiny type, like all over here, they had won like 40 awards. Like, and I was like, you don't have to go out and say, I mean, I think they won certain awards like 3 times. And I'm like, and they were like in 2012 and they're whatever. I was like, I don't need to hear that it was 3 times. I was like, but if you can just make those logos of those awards bigger on your website and put them next to the projects and just whatever. And they said the next presentation, they did not mention the awards. And they go, gosh, you guys have won a lot of awards. I was like, just to be, it is, emerging tech is risky. And so there needs to be, so one of the class I teach, last year I taught business of AR and VR at NYU. And I put together a class, taught it for 2 semesters, had like over 50 guests both times. And then this semester, 1 class away from finishing the first semester about marketing of emerging technologies. And I'm going to teach it again in the spring. And one of the things that I found that was sort of really interesting in doing the research around the class, and then these are here's my, I'm going to pat my back, you know, a little bit here. But I mean, I made these class from scratch based on, you know, sort of my ideas and sort of desire to learn. And I realized that there is that sort of period of time from, if you call it a purchase funnel, you call it a sales funnel, you call it whatever you want to do, when it comes to emerging tech, that at first you have to make that company or whatever, that target, aware that the technology exists if they didn't know, or that sort of innovation exists if they didn't know. And it's sort of like a little bit more of teaching and inspiring about how exciting this tech is. But as you get closer and closer to like money exchanging hands, or like some actual, you know, sort of whatever you call the purchase, whether it be called, yes, we'd like to invite you to come and present, blah, blah. That's when sort of the risk increases. And so it's less about educating and inspiring, and it's much more about reducing fear and reducing risk. And so that's where they start going, oh, well, they've been in a bunch of other festivals before. Oh, they have the quote from whatever on their website. It just is sort of like a transition of decision making. And so it's not that there's this sort of like open conversation where I go, Dara, you've won so many awards, that's awesome. But instead I start going, oh, well, she was at this and she did this, and she did that. And so chances are, if I invite her to go to this, that she'll be fine. That's the reduction of risk. It's not like an overt kind of conversation necessarily, but it is something that if you understand, you're switching from inspiration to like calming and relaxation, and don't worry about it sort of later on. I had a better word for it at one point. I had like a little sticker for myself, but if you sort of understand that kind of is happening, especially when it comes to emerging tech, it's helpful. And speaking that for that last point, often, you know, one of the priorities, whether it be, you know, a festival or a museum or a company, especially when it comes to emerging tech, is how is the technology, I mean, I put here accomplishing your goals, but usually to me, it tends to be like, how is it slightly changing and pushing the boundaries of what's possible with the technology? That kind of experience also increases your likelihood that a company would want to sponsor. So if you are pushing the boundaries of spatial audio, and I'm sorry to keep on using that as the term or the technology, that you go, okay, well, which companies are involved in spatial audio and are trying to sell spatial audio, and they would probably be interested in learning about my project because that will help them accomplish their goals too. They are aligned with my goal is to get my project out there. Their goal is to showcase what's possible. And so they're going to be much more amenable to just having a conversation. especially all those logos, you know, it's a worthwhile investment because the person did pretty well. Okay, and that's where I get a little bit of the inspire investment. It's like show, and this might be culturally different or not, is that there needs to be a certain amount of passion and confidence in what you're doing. And just this sort of general belief that it's going to do well. Not that it's going to win the, you know, sort of awards, but just that it is going, that you know it's going to be a solid piece. And that if you have this sort of belief that it could grow into something more, that there could be a sequel, there could be whatever it is, that just have that information, you know, sort of readily available in your mind. Okay, and then I'm going to go project by project because I did that. Okay, you're lost, baby. Yeah, that's funny. Anybody want to be the new XR creator? You should do it, Dara. I'll do it with you. Okay. Okay, so is focus on our valuable proposition and not fetishizing the technology. I don't think, if you think about your target and you're aware about how much they know about technology, then you can adapt your pitch accordingly. If it is the head of whoever is the curator at Tribeca, they already know what VR is. They already know what AR is. Like, you don't have to spend any time talking about that. What they're interested in is how are you pushing it forward? How are you pushing the medium forward, or storytelling with the medium forward? And people are gonna, how many people are gonna experience it? What's the throughput? Like, that's sort of, it is yes about the sort of like how creative, and I'm just assuming it's gonna be amazingly creative. I'm just assuming the experience will be great. And I'm like, I'm assuming that's over here. And then you go, okay, what are the other things that might be a priority to that person that you're talking to beyond the experience that's going to be amazing? Because it's basically that the experience will be amazing. What are the things do I need to get done? How many people will go? You know, where is it going to be? How big of a space do you need? It becomes very much sort of logistical. Okay, before I get into, and I know I'm probably talking longer than, as I did do a little bit of digging into each of you, at least based on the slides, if you want me to go through that. Yes, no? Where is it? Yes, okay, cool. Okay, so I looked at least the bios that were in the presentation, and I pretended like, you know, I was the target and what were the things that I would see, how would I rewrite it? I don't know why I was rewriting it at 11 o'clock last night, but I was. So this is how I interpret it. There you go, Tara. So if I'm a little slow, that's why, because I wasn't sleeping. First, I put the project first. What's this project? I want to know what the project is. And I would have had a picture of what the project was on the right as opposed to the person. And I go, who's the creator? Well, Isabel's the creator. And to me, very quickly, author, director, writer, I think university lecturer, because it said lecturer, and over 15 years experience. So I'm like, check, good, lots of experience, has a production company. This is how I interpreted. Again, so this could be wrong. This could be wrong. And it's okay if I interpreted it incorrectly. That means that however it is that you're writing it is not coming across in the perfect way or the way that you want it to be. This is how I rewrote and I understood the project. Again, could be wrong. Don't be mad at me. The goal is actually to help. So the experience, I said, appointed by the ancestral spirits within the tree of life. Within this VR experience, your luminous presence helps a grandmother, Nana Lu, awaken buried memories in her last moments. This is such a long sentence. Before she travels from life into death, while her granddaughter gives birth half a world away. And I was like trying to make it quick, fast. And I got a little note. And so, and then I went, what's the tech? What's the tech? I see VR, 6 Degrees of Freedom. I see hand tracking, Oculus Quest, sitting or standing. And then I got into, which I didn't do it as much for everybody, and I apologize, the questions I had. And let's not answer them now because I'm already going so fast, and Dara now has access to the deck. What other VR experiences have you created? Have you ever won any awards? What kind of budget? Where are you hoping to release this? What do you hope people will take away? Because it is depressing. I know it's graphic and it was pretty. I saw the thing from before, but I immediately go, because I hate, there's too many depressing VR things, although I love animation. So, but it feels like every animation is somebody dies. And who do you think would be the best supporters? Like, who out there would want this kind of project to be showcased? Is there anything out there? And I don't know those answers, right? You know the projects best. And honestly, like, I love amazing storytelling. So, and the graphics that were early, there it was. I was like, that is amazing. I would want to see those graphics everywhere. And seeing that means the daughter's smiling and she's pregnant, and I'm like, and the grandma doesn't look, she's smiling. I'm like, this is not going to be the most depressing thing I've ever seen. And so I'm sort of like, it is probably about, circle of life to be super cheesy and Disney about it. But that's the impression. Okay, we get into and Antoine, is he here?
Antoine couldn't make it today.
Okay, so I'm not going to talk about him.
And I did a deep dive actually into his project yesterday, so we can just jump over Antoine.
Yeah, and I have this sort of like, what sparked your interest, blah blah, specific team members, and then Project Bluebird.
That's Joy.
Okay, and Joy, are you? Oh, there you are. Okay, excellent. So again, rewrote this just as I can't help myself sometimes with rewriting things, even if it takes me a little while. So I go, what do I get from this? She's artist, graphic designer, writer, author, animator, comic animator, millions of views of videos, performs live drawing concerts, committed to feminism and ecology. Like, okay, I have a general sense. Like, millions of views of videos is really interesting to me as a potential investor or a potential whatever, of like creating things that people respond to in a huge way. I'm like, awesome. If I have a brand and I want to sort of have a good chance, reduce that risk that somebody will see the project, that kind of information is really exciting to me. It's funny, I haven't read Women Who Run with the Wolves, but I know that I probably should. And so I liked a little bit of like, there was that teeny backstory, right? It connects. I immediately go, oh, I've wanted to read that book. And so right away, I'm sort of in support of the project. And then, gosh, I got a little scared, Joy, I have to admit. That it seems amazing, but I'm like, interactive, nonlinear, mystical retelling of Bluebeard with multiple branches of stories. Okay, cool. This is what I understand. All experience from the perspective of sisterhood of dead wives who suffered violence, femicide, and sought retribution for the victimization by narcissistic perverts and manipulators. Okay, at least you're laughing. That second sentence was, I was like, what is this going to be like? I watch Game of Thrones. I watch murder, like long form murder. I watch different languages of murder stories. I will take it in and love it.
I just want to explore and this is a retelling. This is my version of this tale because I don't like this tale.
Right. Well, but that's sort of, so this is how when I read it, and this is where it's sort of good to have at least one outside perspective of going like, this is how I understood it. So I go at the beginning, first sentence, and I'm like, pretty interesting. Second sentence, I'm like, am I going to be sitting there being like victimized through the entire VR experience? And I don't think so, because you're like, you talk about sisterhood of dead wives, and it sounds like it's empowering to a degree because you are interested in feminism. And so but some of those other things gets me, especially if I would say chances are you're presenting to a man in this space, to just don't downplay anything. Don't change your vision in any way, but just understand who your target is and understand who you're talking to and why, that's where I never, ever want somebody to change what their vision is, but I do want to make sure that it's explained in a way that will communicate to the audience in a way that they want to hear. And then the tech, all I saw was VR. I don't understand if there was any other thing.
This is not a VR. This is a video game in multiple platforms. And,
yeah, so again, this is where it's sort of, it has to be more, that's why a little bit like I separate the tech, because the tech is a little bit boring for most people, but it is for the people who are making the decisions. They'll want to be like, this level of tech with this whatever, and how you're pushing it. And I love branching storylines. So that to me always gets exciting, especially if it's the, watch it over and over again. Some of the initial questions, and I'm sorry that I didn't do as many questions for you because I would have had 15 more minutes, but my calendar and my brain did not accomplish that. And I would have had more questions. Like, which companies are you looking to? Why do you think?
To jump in, I'm sorry, Sam. So we are 20 minutes out from the end of this. And a quick question, not to abruptly stop you now, but I feel like everyone is gaining a lot of insight from this. Am I correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
This is super generous of you to do. I did not ask Sam to do this. Sam did this on her own. And I am so blown away. And I'm very grateful. So I think that we should use maybe the next 15 minutes to do this. And then I'll do a brief outro for the week.
Okay.
That sound good?
If that's okay.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. I'm still going. Okay. So, and all of this, remember all of this from, this is like my 7-year-old. She's been doing one side of a heart and then she wants me to the other side of a heart. Like that is really, that's where it's coming from. It's not coming at all. I wish, and Dara knows this about me, I wish I could be an amazing storyteller. I wish that I could have that boy, do I wish that I could draw and paint and sculpt, and that I like will go to museums and go to these things so that I can, in my mind, pretend for a little bit that I am like that. I'd like to be nearby people who are, I do not have that ability. The ability that I do have, which is somebody is called creative, and I'm like, is to help people explain what they're trying to do. And so that's what I'm trying to do here. And I'd rather have it be that I'm the one with the love, with the support, with the whatever, that I'm the one who asks those questions and that it's coming from a good place, so that when you're in presenting to somebody, you're sitting there and you're confident because I already got some of these questions. And even if you don't answer them, even if you decide, gosh, I'm not even going to listen to this because whatever, it's been in your head. And so if somebody does ask, you be like, oh, Sam asked me about that a while ago. And you've at least thought about it. So that's sort of where, why do you think men would be interested in your project? And maybe they're not. And then so you go, okay, well, we need a feminist organization is going, like, that's where it should play. Like something that is, identify themselves as a feminist organization is where you want the gameplay to be. That's okay. Anything is okay. It's just making the conscious decision about it. And where do you expect to show it? Or do you expect to have it or display? These are questions, don't have to answer now. It's for you, you to answer. Damien, Manny, I see you. Okay. Visual fine artist, illustrator, tattoo artist. I have tattoos. Yay. Filmmaker, past 15 years, and you developed this graphic universe explored in paintings with two main characters. That's sort of vaguely how I figured out what you're trying to do. And then there's also ballpoint pen drawings that you exhibited. This is how I interpret it. Again, it could be totally wrong, and you could be like, no, not at all. That's hilarious. And that's okay. So the experience, I don't know what tech you're using. I think that you're trying to do a minimal Indian ink mural painting inspired by science fiction and video games of the 80s, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
I love the 80s. I am like 80 to 83, 84. I mean, I was born in 1975, so it's like my childhood. For sure, any of that, adore, adore, adore. And then you direct and animate the odd creatures through an outlandish quest. I have no idea what that means. It sounds fun, but I have no idea why you would direct and animate odd creatures. It doesn't make, I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds cool, but I don't know the goal. So what technology you're using? Oh, I didn't finish the sentence because we started our thing. How do you think your flat illustrations will translate in this new technology? So if you're doing a presentation that you might have like, here's the flat illustration, here's how it's going to change with this experience, like comparison. And then there was a thing in the description about identifying with the characters and facilitating friendships. And I'm like, a little bit of how and why. I'm like, be great. I'm excited. I saw I think that this, where is it? And I could be wrong. This was yours?
No, it's
Nope.
not mine.
Oh, okay.
No.
Yeah, so that's how, that is what people can get lost, right? So,
yes.
Okay, so that was sort of some of the thing of at least that outside perspective of somebody putting in, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes to understand what you're doing. And that's what I come up with. And I would say most people you're presenting to will spend less time. Okay.
Thank you.
Melanie, are you here? There you are. Hi. I love the glasses and the haircut. Sorry. I wish I could pull that off. I can't. Okay. Mea culpa. Digital media artist, speaker, researcher. You've exhibited at galleries and film festivals globally. I do globally when you do Europe and the US. It's global. I think it was Asia too, but I don't know. But I'm like, globally sounds very big. Creates VR and AR worlds focused around interactions and gameplay, evoking deep emotions. That last sentence means zero to me. I mean, deep emotions, great, but there are people creating interactions and gameplay for businesses. And I'm like, okay, that's metaverse, right? And so the deep emotions part is the most interesting to me because I'm like, what are the emotions, the why, the how? That is that differentiating. And then the experience, action and horror. I hate horror, but that's okay. I will watch like a Stranger Things or whatever, so I'm okay if it's not too scary. I've actually watched horror movies now on the side of the screen in the daytime, and then I go back and I watch the sections. There's some Haunting of Hill House and all that sort of stuff is really amazing. Dara, if you get to watch those haunting things, really cool. Hidden ghosts in the background and all that sort of stuff. It was awesome. Okay, but I can't watch it directly or I'll freak out. Okay, action and horror experience within a world filled with giant mutants, and I think they're NPCs, right? That's the simple way of saying it. And you explore and solve puzzles to progress in the game. So looking at action and horror, I'm thinking that the emotions are fear, but I end up thinking that when it comes to jump scares are super easy in VR. Super easy. And my guess is based on the fact that you've been doing galleries and films and speaker and researcher, you're not doing jump scares. You're doing something much deeper, much more interesting than that by a mile.
That's
or
what
by
I added in my
kilometers.
pitch.
Sorry, by kilometers, many kilometers. That's my US miles. So, and then VR digest. So you play settings, quick buttons within the story. I want to know, like, I want to see the amazing creativity. I want to see the pushing of boundaries and the unique aspects of things. And everybody's saying sort of AR, VR worlds, AR interactions, blah, blah. I want the rest. I want everything else that makes what you're doing unique to shine. That's really what I'm interested. Because it's horror, there's, I sort of go like, who are the best partners if you want to put out there, where are you planning to distribute? And is there, it might just be fun, but when you say emotions, I was a psychology major undergrad, it feels like you're trying to have somebody learn from the horror experience, potentially, something or not. It could always be fun. I'm always happy to have just a fun thing. But if it is supposed to be deeper and more meaningful than that, I would want to know a little bit more about that. Benjamin, you ready? I hope this isn't scary. Again, right? Big hearts here. I get
everyone is a professional artist, so I feel like everyone here is used to critique.
I hated my crits. I did photography 101. I got an A, and I should have gone and done more, but I hated my critiques. Because I did what I wanted to do, got critiqued, tried to do what everybody else said I should do, got worse and worse and worse, and then I sort of said F it at the end of it and did what I wanted to do at the end, and then got A's again. So I stopped. I should still be more creative though. Okay. Benjamin, I get TV screenwriter, even though I think it was more than TV, but that's what I put together. Narrative designer, digital creator. You've done immersive installations, Instagram series, narrative games, interactive audio stories. So I'm like, okay, this is somebody that can create, can tell stories. Awesome. Then I am disconnected a bit that you're now a little girl on a tiny planet. I start going, huh? Okay. Combating the narrator and villagers just saved the cherry tree, and it only works if you disobey and deviate from the linear narrative. Well, sort of intrigued by that a bit, of this idea of disobedience and deviation, but I don't quite understand the why. Lots of questions here. Is this a VR animated experience? Is it other kind of technology? What do the graphics look like? Who's the rest of the team? Or are you doing it all by yourself? Why anti-management? I'm not saying that it's good or bad or any other things. I'm just trying to understand the why. Are there any companies that align with anti-management? And this is because I've done a lot of brand partnerships. So you might say, absolutely not. There's no companies, but maybe it's like the funding, whoever's going to fund it. I immediately think, and this is my skepticism of technology in general, of what could go wrong, what could go very, very wrong. You're asking people to be anti-management, you're asking people to disobey. Are there things that you're going to have to stop people from abusing the girl in some way? Like, I have no idea. But when you start going anti and disobey, that I start going, what could some kooky person out there do that would be way too upsetting? And then I hate to do this. This one I hate. This is my worst comment of all of these. To me, when you say small planet and kid, I'm like, that reminds me of these other two experiences that are about a small planet and kids. I think there's like 3 or 4. So when you say competitors, there are actually other projects out there about small planets and kids. Even if you go to what was the French fairy tale, the little boy, from The Little Prince, right? So you go, you just have to know how is it different, and you don't have to explain it in your presentation at all. You just have to know for yourself the slight differences. So if somebody is so bold to ask you that, or to say, oh, that reminds me of, they'd be like, oh, that's great. I love whatever. I love the Rose and I experience. That's amazing. Mine is different in that it blah, 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 blah. And then is there any specific tech advancements showcased within the experience? I would want to know that too. Obviously, it feels like you're very, very strong in narrative, but I would want to know technologically, what are you pushing the medium at all? Okay, so this is my other thing. So I had the so what and who cares, and this is the other one I do. I used way too many street signs. I should be more creative, but I'm not. But this is like ultimately creating the experience itself is about your vision. It is about what you're seeing. It is about what you want to make. And you are creating something out of nothing, which I am so absolutely positively jealous and supportive of. But when it comes to actually pitching your projects, that's when you have to step back and realize it's not about you anymore. It is about the person that you are talking to. It is about their goals, their needs, their understanding. They do not have time. And really, honestly, they don't care that much about you, which is really annoying because you've spent hundreds of hours with it. And that person is like, what? Oh, yeah. What? Just come on, tell me. Oh, I have another call. And you have to be like, boom, 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 and out. And I feel for you. I wrote this one piece once that it was like how to pitch a hackathon judge. That was basically like a put in words in this like 4 sentences, because it was the MIT hackathon. And I was sitting there, I was like, they have spent like 3 days coding and developing something. And I'm like, I got 5 minutes. Tell me what you did. And some people were great and other people, I was like, just the way that they talked about it was so bad that there was no way that they were going to win. And they might've had an amazing project. Oh, wait, one other thing before I totally go. And oh, I hate when this happens. It's like when my presentation doesn't pop up. Let's go. Where did it go? Okay, I lost it. It doesn't matter that much. It was basically my contact information. So we'll go in.
I'll share it through. Don't worry.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn.
What do you prefer? Email, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever you want.
If you have a long question, and if you want to talk, like have a long amount of information, email me. Follow up. Obviously, Derek can tell you how busy I've been recently. And then if you have a short, little, quick one, I will check Twitter Messenger more than I check LinkedIn, but I'm pretty much on them most days. And I think Dara and like one other person have been like poking me a lot recently. I have been super busy recently, but when I'll be finishing my class on Thursday, this coming Thursday, so I should be opening up a little bit. Le Petit Prince, let's see, psychological horror, yes, love. Again, you should definitely if anybody likes horror movies, that there are 2 on Netflix now that people have said are some of the best psychological horror movies ever. And then if you watch all of the like what they did, they like there's like hidden things in the background in like every, it feels like in every shot, and even things that you wouldn't even know that they're like.
Is that Midsummer?
No, it's not, because I wouldn't watch that. That's too scary. But it's like The Haunting of Hill Manor and The Haunting of blah blah, and I'm probably mixing the two of them.
Manor.
Yes, and so they'll put like, it's not even in shot. It's in the background in like blurry, and it's the ghost of something in like 40, 50 shots in a film. I just was like, what? So it's enough to just throw you off that you're like, something's wrong. I feel like somebody's looking at me, and it's because they purposely hid ghosts throughout the story, which is, yeah. Okay. Scary movies terrify me. Brazil, Japan. Okay. Any questions, thoughts? Sorry I went so long. I was really just trying to make sure that my when I sort of analyze and look at what things that people do, I tend to be much more nitpicky, which I hope is helpful to get you to be able to be prepared more from when you actually present, that you have heard some of the feedback that maybe friends and family might be like, it was great, I understood completely, that you're like, you have them like, well, they didn't ask about this, or they didn't say that I feel like that you have some of that.
You are the perfect blend of being so supportive and then pure tough love, if you're all familiar with that concept. Sam is so encouraging, and then we'll also tell you how it is. I'm going to start.
Oh, I gave like 50% on some of my first papers for my class, and they were like, what? And then now they're up to like 90s. So it eventually gets through.
So I know we've talked about it, because for all of our participants, I've shared that I'm in the process of booking speakers in February. And I'm just gonna restart my campaign to bring you in, because I think this was really helpful. So yeah, we're just gonna have you come back. The feedback was really important, and that was super generous of you to go through every project. As I said, I did not ask Sam to do that individually for everyone.
Well, I didn't want to be like, so what, who cares? And then people are like, well, what do you mean? I don't understand. And like, how am I supposed to know my targets, and and so hopefully by at least going through, you start to go, okay, who would be that worst case scenario person reading what you're doing? Mm-hmm. And then you're like, okay, now I know what I have to pull out, because it's all that, what makes you unique, what makes your project unique, and how does it align with whoever it is that you're trying to target? And then how do you communicate it so that they understand that as well? That is, and it sounds so simple, but it's very, it's not so simple to do.
No. This is also going back earlier in the week, speaking about how do you market and talk about your project? What is the actual narrative that you are building? And then what is the story of how to sell the product? And also something I'm sure Sam will agree with me on, you're going to talk about your project differently to different people. So you have to really understand your audience. And I brought it up before, but are you talking to a funder? Is it a publisher? Am I a gamer? You know, understanding who that is. And it gets complicated when you don't necessarily have one-on-one face-to-face engagement. So you also have to consider the platform in which you're communicating, not just in which the game is built. And I know that that's not new news for any of you, but I think it is so crucial to be thinking about this from very early on and being able to have the flexibility to pivot those narratives. Yeah.
Well, I've had people that, you know, when I was part of or more active in like Fifth Wall Forum, which I helped.
Immersive theater group.
Yeah, it's like pretty much it was trying to combine theater and AR and VR, and we had, you know, somebody from Broadway and all that kind of stuff, and there were, you know, Tony Award winning people.
Is that still going?
What?
Is it still going?
Yeah. I was part of the reason why it started and why it continued to go. And then I went and started to do other things. So they're off and I'm like, I'll be on a board and you can call and talk to me when you want. That was taking up a lot of time and zero pay. So, but I was, the point being that there were Tony Award winning producers and I'd be like, can you like explain what you're doing? And I went through sort of a little bit of a same thing with them and they can't, it didn't make sense right away. And some people were like so amazing, like such amazing storytellers that they would talk for, and I'm a victim of this too, like 15 minutes telling the story. And I was like, the person might only have 5. And so nobody's perfect at it at all. The goal is to be just a little bit better to increase your chances.
So, and also in speaking about time and things, I know, Sam, you have stuff going on today. And then for everyone here, I know we're at the end of our week and everyone seems really engaged with this. Thank you again for making it personal for all the projects. Does anyone have any final questions? Because we're going to have to close down. Until next time.
Yeah, in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's, and are they, so what's next, Dara, for you, for the group?
So I was just looking at a few messages in here. So what comes next for all of you?
Beers.
Beers, yes.
See, that's a friend. So I'm still on the T. I haven't done that. I have a client call that I have to be ready for. And then
yeah, I mean it's noon here. It's 12:05, so I can switch.
They can say beers after 12, right? I mean,
yes.
We're in France. We should be having wine.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm fine with either. But
no, beer, I would have beer. It's okay.
Not a bad time to drink. All that to say though, things to look forward to next. So this is not the last time you'll hear from us, of course, before you're in New York. Cami is your point person for logistics. So she's gonna be the one working with you to book travel. She's the one, of course, that has been working really hard to research Airbnbs and finding lodging for everyone. She's gonna be the person that you're going to ask about visa stuff. And I wanna emphasize, everyone needs to be vaccinated in New York and in the US, but particularly in New York.
You have to show your card.
You have to literally show, my card's over there, but you literally have to show it because you can't get into most venues, restaurants. Not
take your temperature and then show, and then they want to see your card too.
And I'm sure it's very similar in Paris. I know you guys have had more strict lockdowns than we have, but something to definitely consider when you come. Especially, I'm sure that all of you will really enjoy the New York City nightlife, and you cannot get into.
I don't know about the third shot. It's not yet. The third shot people have started to talk about, but it's hard to find. The other thing that I've been told about New York versus most places is more people actually do wear masks in New York City. Mm-hmm. For some reason, I guess it's just we all have lived in very close quarters, and so there are many, many more. I moved outside the city here. And people don't really wear masks here unless they're indoors. But if I'm in the city, it's like everybody indoors and outdoors.
So all that to say, please, if you're not vaccinated yet, get vaccinated. That's gonna be really important for travel. I'm sure you all are, but if you weren't, please do that. Also, in thinking about the different locations, offices, studios we're going to visit, that's going to be something really important. And we're going to have to submit that information, not necessarily your personal stuff, but it will be needed on site. And I don't know how it is in Paris, but it is important in New York. Other details. So as was kind of discussed on Discord the other night in our group, I think it makes sense for us all to reconnect maybe at the end of this month or early January and have a get together, talk about progress on projects and maybe show some prototyping. And we'll be checking in. Discord is going to be the #1 way that I think it makes sense to communicate outside of official information that Cami and I might send to you. If you have any questions for me about programming, I think Cami and I, like you can see the different types of questions you would ask the two of us. Cami definitely helps to inform programming and volunteer different names. But I would say you can direct any of those questions about sessions, who you want to hear from, people that we could potentially bring in. Send those to me and I'll coordinate. And then of course, any questions about travel, lodging, as I listed visas, that can go to Cami. Other things that would be important here. Oh, the next 2 months, of course, these are all your passion projects. You're all working on them. Please remember that when you come to New York, we're going to want you to show progress on what you've worked on. If you need guidance on that, I am available to jump in and have these types of sessions. And I want to do those with you. I want you to all feel that you are fully encouraged and you have those resources. Also, in using the Discord, feel free to send links as you're working on things or come across it in your day-to-day. We want to inspire each other and encourage that and have an open dialogue. I'm not setting the precedent that everyone has to be present on it all the time or you have to be checking it daily, but it should be a place that you're coming and participating in as individuals during this program, because it's going to have a lot of resources and we all here have knowledge to share with one another. I think as far as updates on my end, that's it. Cami, do you have any updates?
Yeah, actually, I really wanted to thank Samantha. Thank you so much. I wanted to thank you, Dara. I wanted to thank you for all this amazing week, for the amazing speakers. I wanted to thank you, all of you, for your attention, for your time. And I would like to propose, maybe if you want, in January, we can have a drink in Paris before to go. It can be cool to meet each other and talk a little bit more, if you want. So I will let you know for a day.
I think that would be really fun. You could just put me on FaceTime and put me against a beer.
Yeah.
No, but I think that you should all meet, and Cami and I were chatting about that the other day. I think it's such a great idea if you all get together. And
my parents have a place in Paris, so there was ever just I don't need lodging at some point. Sorry, I'm putting in my little pitch for that. Sorry, that's okay. No. So my mother and my sister speak fluent French. I do not. So I'm the annoying American.
It's okay.
But you have a French scarf. Yeah.
I'm thinking of any other. Oh, I wanted to quickly ask, who here has been to New York? We have 2 people?
3.
4? Oh, Melanie, sorry, what?
It's been such a long time for me. I don't know if it counts.
Okay. So 4 people have technically been to New York. Oh yeah. What, Isabel, are you not sure?
Yeah, well, 20 years ago. So 20 years and maybe I won't recognize anything. So I don't know.
Well, a couple tips. I mean, the weather is pretty much the same. It might be blizzarding. Pack for warmth. It is cold. New York is a series of nightmare wind tunnels when you're walking in the winter.
Slushy in the subway.
And New York is filthy. New York is a disgusting city.
No, it is not disgusting. The parks are really nice and it's very pretty.
The parks are, but
if you're walking up and down subway, make sure you have, I mean, it would be like, I don't know, the metro, how like it can be slippery. So getting a nice pair of, gripped, like good grip.
No one likes to slip in the subway. Okay, it's filthy. New York is filthy. I don't care what anyone says.
It is. New York is my favorite place, and it is amazing. But just
New York is a place.
It's a place, please. It is, but no, there's I would say if you're gonna go, just expect to do a little bit more. Well, I guess Paris, you walk a lot, but I think that it's not, the streets are wider, but it also means that they're going to be slushier and dirtier to trek through. And so just plan for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just so that you all know, the plan right now, as I'm programming it, is that we will be all over the city. There was debate that we would be in one location for the majority of the week, and that still might happen for the most of your workshops. But I think more realistically, I'm in the process now of booking different studios every day that we'll be working in, or different companies. And then we will also be rushing around, mostly via the subway, to different field trips and different locations, museums, exhibitions. So something to also keep in mind, you're all very urbane and urban, but if anyone is quite nervous about the subway, you can privately message me and we can chat, because I understand there are some concerns there, and I'm sensitive to the fact that some people hate public transit, but it's the easiest way to navigate New York. Not cars, but I would say subway.
Part of it is that it's just faster. There can be a lot of traffic, especially in the middle of the day, and at like 5 o'clock, the taxis switch over. And so it's really virtually impossible to get taxis at sort of the end of the day. And so sometimes it's just to get one place to another. You gotta go up and down the slushy stairs.
The other thing I want to bring up, and this is completely valid and not to scare anyone, but the US is a curious place. And I know that I've worked with some international colleagues before that have gotten concerned about crime and that kind of stuff. Not that crime doesn't exist everywhere, but if you do also have concerns about safety, you can privately message me, and I'm happy to work with you to find something a balance of making you feel comfortable. Because New York is a big place if you've never been to it. And, I think all of you live in Paris, or all of you have lived in major cities, but if there are questions, happy to work with you. I want everyone to feel comfortable, and you can always, this is very true about Paris, but I do want to say, if anyone,
what is Cesur? Not safe, or
not sure, not safe. Also, I'm going to have to run because I have to drive to a meeting. But what is that?
Oh, pepper spray, great. No,
listen, whatever anyone's comfortable with. I'm never going to tell them not.
I mean, don't put your purse on the back of your chair. It's things like that. Like those are things where you don't.
But we're going to keep you safe. But again, even if it doesn't come up now, you don't have to share it publicly. I consider, if anyone feels very claustrophobic in subways, or if you are concerned about theft, or, if you question about certain neighborhoods.
I've lived in New York for like 22
years. I love that you've just become part of the programming.
Knock on wood, I never have had anything stolen. I've never, nothing. So you just, I would say that New Yorkers just look serious, but French look serious when they walk around. It's like, don't mess with me face, and you're good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I feel like between the stereotypes of New Yorkers and Parisians, we all have the very serious face that we can do. So we all have that in common.
Don't mess with me. Yeah. And you just walk. I know where I'm going.
So with that being said, let me close out the session. Does anyone have any questions at all? Final thoughts? Still wants to be part of Digital Playground. Good. Okay. So
I just would like to thank you for this week, because you made a great work of organization, of all the speakers were very very interesting. Thank you for this first part. That's it.
Thank you. Yeah, this has been awesome. And shout out to Cami. You've handled so many logistics on the back end, so many of like the tech stuff and doing embassy coordination. So thank you.
Thank you, Dara.
Yeah, of course.
You are amazing too.
I love this. This is so good. The final thing, I mentioned this at the beginning of the week. Lena, the wonderful intern at the embassy, has created a survey, and we're going to send that to you next week. I'm going to add a few more questions to it, but questions like which talks were most helpful, all kind of just very similar to the feedback I've been checking in with all of you about this week, that really helps us to provide for you. So I will probably send that out Monday or Tuesday, depending on when Lena updates it. And then we will use that to help build out more of the in-person program. So that'd be great. And it was a pleasure to meet all of you. And I can't wait to work with you in person. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Bye-bye. See you soon.
See you soon.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Everyone.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Salut.